Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, testing. Alright, we sound pretty clear today. Hello, 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 and welcome to another stream of reading the adventures of Sherlock Holmes. I hope you're all ready, because we are on to soon the last 3 stories, because we are going to be starting story number 10 of the collection, which is The Adventure of the Noble Bachelor. Anyways, let me go ahead and make this a little more presentable. By going and getting my book. That's the wrong button. There we go. All right. So, let's get started. Let me just arrange all this. Like that. Here we go. Story 10. The Adventure of the Noble Bachelor. The Lord of St. Simon's marriage, and its curious termination, has long ceased to be a subject of interest in these exalted circles in which the unfortunate bridegroom moves. Fresh scandals have eclipsed it, and their most eloquent details have drawn on the gossip away from this 4-year-old drama. As I have reason to believe, however, that full fact has never been revealed to the general public, and as my friend Sherlock Holmes has a considerable share in clearing the matter up, I feel that no memoir of him should be complete without some little sketch of this remarkable episode. Why am I not scrolling well? That's weird. It was a few weeks before my own marriage, during the days when I was still sharing rooms with Holmes in Baker Street, that he came home from an afternoon stroll to find a letter on the table waiting for him. I had remained indoors all day, for the weather had taken a sudden turn to rain, with high autumnal winds, and the Giselle bullet, which I had brought back in one of my limbs as a relic of my Afghan campaign, throbbed with dull pertinence. With my body in one easy chair, my legs upon another, I had surrounded myself with a cloud of newspapers until at last, saturated with the news of the day, and now it wants to scroll too fast. There we go. I tossed them all aside and lay listless, waiting, or watching the huge chest and monogram upon the envelope upon the table, and wondering lazily who my friend's noble old correspondent could be. Here is my fashionable epistle. Epistle? Epistil or LE. I'm gonna guess that means like a guess or hypothesis. Looks like we're already learning words today, folks. Epistle. A letter. Or or a poem, or other literary works in the form of a letter or series of letters. A book of the New Testament in the form of a letter from the apostle. Okay, so I guess it just means he's just commenting on it, not making a guess of it. Here is a very fashionable epistle, I remarked as he entered. Your morning letters, if I remember right, were from a fishmonger and a tide waiter. Yes, my correspondence has certainly the charm of variety, he answered, smiling. The humbler are usually the more interesting. This looks like one of those unwelcome social summons which calls upon a man either to be bored or to lie. He broke this. Thank you for the inconsistent scrolling. He broke the seal and glanced over the contents. Oh, come. It may prove to be something of interest after all. Oh wait, no. Wrong person. Oh, come. It may prove to be something of interest after all. Not social, then. No, distinctly professional. And from a noble client, one of the highest in England. My dear fellow, I congratulate you. I assure you, Watson, without affectation, that status of my client is a matter of less moment to me than the interest of his case. It is just possible, however, that that also may not be wanting in this new investigation. You've been reading the papers diligently of late, have you not? It looks like it, said I, ruefully pointing to the huge bundle in the corner. I have had nothing else to do. It is fortunate, for you will perhaps be able to post me up. I read nothing except the criminal news and the agony columns. The latter is always instructive. But if you have followed recent events so closely, you must have read about Lord St. Simon's and his wedding. Ah, yes, with deepest interest. That is well. The letter which I hold in my hand is from Lord St. Simon. I will read it to you. In return, you must turn over these papers and let me have whatever bears upon the matter. That is what he says. This is... Okay. This is what he says. Oh, or is that still Holmes with that last line there? Whatever. My dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes, Lord Blackwater tells me that I may place implicit reliance upon your judgment and discretion. I have determined, therefore, to call upon you and to consult you in reference to the very painful event which has occurred in connection with my wedding. Mr. Lestrade of Scotland Yard is acting already in the matter, but assures me he sees no objection to your cooperation, and he even thinks that it might be of some assistance. I will call at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and should you have any other engagement at the time, I hope you will postpone it. And as this matter is of paramount importance, yours faithfully, Robert St. Simon. It is dated with the governor's mansions, and written with a quill pen, but the noble lord has had the misfortune to get a smear of ink upon the outer side of his right finger, remarked Holmes as he folded up the epistle. He says 4 o'clock. It is 3 now. He will be here in an hour. Then I have just the time, with your assistance, to get clear upon the subject. Turn over these papers and arrange the extracts in their order of time, while I take a glance as to who our client is. He picked up a red-covered volume from a line of books of reference up beside the mantelpiece. Here he is, said he, sitting down and flattening it upon his knee. Lord Robert Walsingham, de Baron St. Simon, second son of Duke of Baltimore. Arms, Azura. 3 Ecliptrops in chief of one of Fist stable. Born in 1846, he is 41 years of age, which is mature for marriage. Was Undersecretary for the Colonies and Leader Administration. The Duke, his father, was at one time Secretary for Foreign Affairs. They inherited Plantagenet blood by direct descendant, and a Tundor, or on the distaff side. Ah, well, there's nothing very instructive. In all this, I think I must turn to you, Watson, for something more solid. I've very little difficulty finding what I want, said I. Well, the facts are quite recent, and the matter struck me as remarkable. I feared to refer them to you, however, as I knew that you had an inquiry on hand that you disliked the intrusion of other matters.
Oh, you mean the little problem, a governor's square furniture van? That is quite cleared up now, though indeed it was obvious from the first. Pray, give me the results of your newspaper selection.
Here in the first notice, which I can find, it is a personal column of the Morning Post and dates as you see. Some weeks back, a marriage has been arranged, it says, and will, if rumor is correct, very shortly take place, between Lord Robert St. Simon, second son of Duke Balamor, and Miss Hattie Doran, the only daughter of Aloysius. Aloysius? That's a weird name. It's Aloysius. Aloysius Doran, Esquire of San Francisco, California, USA, and that is all. Come on, scroll, scroll, scroll.
There's to the point,
remarked Holmes, stretching his long, thin legs towards the fire. Who is saying all this? I think it's Watson. There was a paragraph amplifying this in one of the society papers of the same week. Here it is. There will soon be a call for protection in the marriage market, for the present free trade principles appear to tell heavily against our home product. One by one of the management of the noble houses of Great Britain is passing into the hands of our fair cousins from across the Atlantic. An important addition has been made during the last week to the list of prizes which have been borne away by these charming invaders. Lord St. Simon, who has shown himself for over 20 years proof against the little god's arrows, has now definitely announced his approaching marriage with Hattie Doran, the fascinating daughter of California millionaire Miss Doran, whose graceful figure and striking face attracted much attention at Westbury House festivities, is an only child. It is currently reported that her dowry will run to considerably over 6 figures, with expensities for the future. As it is an open secret that the Duke of Balamor has been compelled to sell his pictures within the last few years, and as Lord St. Simon has no property of his own save the small estate of Mitchmore, it's obvious that the California heiress is not the only gainer by an alliance which will enable her to make the easy and common transition from a Republican lady to a British peeress. Come on, scroll.
Anything else?
Asked Holmes, yawning. Yes, plenty. Then there is another note in the Morning Post that says the marriage would be an absolutely quiet one. That would be at St. George's, Hanover Street, that over half a dozen intimate friends should be invited. The party would return to the furnished house at Lancaster Gate, which has been taken by Mr. Aloysius Doran. 2 days later, that is, on Wednesday last, there is a curt announcement that the wedding has taken place. The honeymoon has been passed at Lord Backwater's place, near Petersfield. Those are all the notices which appeared before the disappearance of the bride.
Before the what?
Asked Holmes with a start. The vanishing of the lady.
When did she vanish, then?
At the wedding breakfast.
Indeed, that is more interesting than it promised to be. Quite dramatic, in fact.
Yes, it struck me as being a little out of common. A little.
They often vanish before the ceremony, and occasionally during the honeymoon, but I cannot call to mind anything quite so prompt as this. Pray, let me have the details.
I warn you that they are very incomplete.
Perhaps we may make them less so.
Such as they are set forth in a single article of a morning paper of yesterday, which I'll read to you. It is headed "Singular Occurrence at a Fashionable Wedding." The family of Lord Robert St. Simon is thrown into the greatest what is this fucking word? Consternation by the strange and painful episodes which have taken place in connection with his wedding. The ceremony, shortly announced in the papers of yesterday, occurred on the previous morning. It is only now that we have been possible to confirm the strange rumors which have been so pristinely floating about, in spite of the attempts of the friends to hush the matter up. So much public attention has now been drawn to it, that no good purpose can be served by affecting to disregard what is a common subject for conversation. The ceremony which was performed at St. George's, Hanover Square, was a very quiet one, no one being present save the father of the bride, Mr. Aloysius Doran, and the Duchess of Belmore, Lord Blackwater, Lord Etus, or Eustace? Maybe that's Eustace. And Lady Clara St. Simon, the younger brother and sister of the bridegroom, and Lady Alicia of Winterton. The whole party proceeded afterwards to the house of Mr. Aloysius Doran, at Lancaster Gate, which breakfast had been prepared. It appears that some little trouble was caused by a woman whose name has not been asserted, whose endeavours to force her way into the house after the bridal party, alleging that she had some claim upon Lord St. Simon. It was only after a painful and prolonged scene that she was ejected by the butler and the footman. The bride, who had fortunately entered the house before this unpleasant interruption, had sat down to breakfast with the rest, when she complained of a sudden indisposition and retired to her room, her prolonged absence having caused some comment. Her father followed her, but learned from her maid she only come up to her chamber for an instant, caught up an ulster and bonnet, and hurried down to the passage. One of the footmen declared that he had seen a lady leave the house thus apparelled, but had refused to credit that it was his mistress, believing her to be with the company. On the assertion that his daughter had disappeared, Mr. Aloysius Doran, in his conjunction with the bridegroom, instantly put themselves in communication with the police, and very energetic inquiries are being made, which will probably result in a speedy clearing up of this very singular business. Up to a late hour last night, however, nothing has transpired as to the whereabouts of the missing lady. There are rumors of foul play in the matter, and it is said that the police have caused the arrest of the woman who has It is said that the police have caused the arrest of the woman who had okay, some weird phrasing you got there. Who had caused the original disturbance, and a belief from jealousy or some other motive she may have concerned in the strange disappearance of the bride.
And is that all?
Only one little item in another of the morning papers, but it is a suggestive one.
And that is?
Come on, scroll. That is, that Miss Flora Miller, the lady who had caused the disturbance, has actually been arrested. It appears she was formerly a dancer of the Algero, and she has known the bridegroom for years. There is no further particulars, and the whole case is in your hands now, so far as it has been set forth in the public press. What does Dansua mean? Caretaker, childhood friend, mistress. What is this? Dansu. Yes. A female ballet dancer.
And an extremely tempting case it appears to be. I would not have missed it for worlds. But there is a ring at the bell, Watson. And as the clock strikes, or the clock makes it a few minutes after 4, I have no doubt this will prove to be our noble client. Do not dream of going, Watson, for I very much prefer having a witness, if only as a check to my own memory.
Lord Robert St. Simon, announced our page boy, throwing open the door. A gentleman entered with a pleasant, cultured face, high nose, and pale, with something of, perhaps, of indolence about the mouth, and with the steady, well-opened eyes of a man whose pleasant lot it had ever been to command and to be obeyed. His manner was brisk, and yet his general appearance gave an undue impression of age, for he had a slight forward stoop and a little bend in the knee as he walked. His hair, too, as he swept off his very curly brimmed hat, was grizzled round the edge and thinned upon the top. As to his dress, it was careful to the verge of foppishness, with high collar, black frock coat, white waistcoat, yellow gloves, patent leather shoes, and light-colored gaiters. He advanced slowly into the room, turning his head from left to right and swinging in his right hand the cord which held his golden eyeglasses.
"Good day, Lord St. Simon,"
said Holmes, raising and bowing.
"Pray take the basket chair. This is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson. Throw upon a little to the fire, and we will talk this matter over."
Almost. Let's try getting him something not so old sounding. I know he's in his 40s, but let's see. "A most painful matter to me, as you can most readily imagine, Mr. Holmes. I've been cut to the quick. I understand that you have already managed several delicate cases of this sort, sir, though I presume that you are hardly from the same class society."
"No, I am descending. I beg your pardon. My last client of the sort was a king."
"Oh, really? I had no idea.
"And which king? The king of Scandinavia."
What? Had he lost his wife?"
"You can understand,"
said Holmes suavely,
"that I extend to the affairs of my other clients the same secrecy in which I promised to yours."
"Ah, of course. Very right, very right. I'm sure I beg your pardon. As to my own case, I'm ready to give you any information which may assist you in forming an opinion."
"Thank you. I have already learned all that is public prints, nothing more. I presume that I may take it as correct this article, for example, as to the disappearance of the bride."
Lord St. Simon glanced over it. "Yes, that is correct, as far as it goes."
"But it needs a great detailed supplementing before anyone could offer an opinion. I think that I might arrive at my facts more directly by questioning you."
"Pray do so."
"When did you first meet Miss Hattie Doran?"
"In San Francisco, a year ago."
"You were traveling in the States?"
"Yes."
"Did you become engaged then?"
"No."
"But you were on friendly footing?"
"I was assumed by her society, or amused by her society, and she could tell that I was amused."
"Your father is very rich?"
"He's the richest man on the Pacific slope."
"How did he make his money?"
"In mining. He had nothing a few years ago. Then he struck gold, invested, and came up by leaps and bounds."
"Now, what is your own impression as to the young lady's, your wife's character?"
The nobleman swung his glasses a little faster and stared down into the fire. "You see, Holmes," said he, "my wife was 20 before her father became a rich man. During that time she ran free in a mining camp, wandered through woods or mountains, so that her education had come from nature rather than from the schoolmaster. She is what we call in England a tomboy, with a strong nature, wild and free, unfettered by any sort of tradition. She's impetuous, is volcanic. I was about to say, she is swift in making up her mind, and fearless in carrying out her resolution. On the other hand, I'm not given her name, which I have the honor to bear." He gave a little stately cough. "Had I not thought her to be at the bottom a noble woman, I believe she is capable of heroic self-sacrifice, that anything dishonorable would be repugnant of her."
"Have you her photograph?"
"I brought this with me." He opened a locket and showed us the full face of a very lovely woman. It was not a photograph, but an ivory miniature. The artist had brought out the full effect of the luscious black hair, the large dark eye, and the exquisite mouth. Holmes gazed long and earnestly at it. Then he closed the locket and handed it back to Lord St. Simon.
"The young lady came to London, then, and renewed your acquaintance?"
"Yes, her father brought her over for this last London season. I met her several times, became engaged to her, and now married her."
"She brought, I understand, a considerable dowry?"
"A fair dowry. Not more than is usual in my family."
"And this, of course, remains to you, since the marriage is fait accompli?" I really have made no inquiries on the subject. Very naturally not. Did you see Miss Darwin on the day before the wedding? Yes. She in good spirits. Never better. Kept talking about what we should do in our future lives. Indeed, it was very interesting. On the morning of the wedding, she was as bright as possible, at least until after the ceremony. And did you observe any change in her? Well, to tell the truth, I saw them the first signs I had ever seen that her temper was just a little sharp. The incident, however, was too trivial to relate. It could have no possible bearing upon the case. Marie, let us have it. Rule that. Oh, it is childish. She dropped her bouquet as we went towards the vestry. She was passing the front pew at the time, fell over into the pew. There was a moment's delay, but the gentleman in the pew handed it up to her again. None appeared to be worse for the fall, and when I spoke to her of the matter, she answered me abruptly. In the carriage on the way home, she seems absurdly agitated over this trifling cause. Indeed, you say there was a gentleman in the pew. Some of the general public were present then? Oh, yes, it is impossible to exclude them when the church is open. This gentleman was not one of your wife's friends? No, no. I call him a gentleman by courtesy, but he's quite a common-looking man. Hardly noticed his appearance. Really, I think we are wandering rather far from the point. Lady St. Simon then returned from the wedding in a less cheerful frame of mind than she had gone to it. What should she do on re-entering her father's house? I saw her have a conversation with the maid. And who was her maid? Alice is her name. She's an American. Came from California with her. A confederal servant? A little too much so. Seemed to me that her mistress allowed her to take great liberties. Still, of course, in America, they look upon these things in a different way. How long did you speak to her? This Alice.
I read that as confederal. That's confidential. A confidential servant. That is a completely different implication. Oh, a few minutes. I had something else to think of. Or how long did she speak to Alice? Oh, a few minutes. I had something else to think of. You did not overhear what they said? Lady St. Simon said something about jumping a claim. She was accustomed to using slang of the kind. I have no idea what she meant. American slang is very expressive sometimes. What did your wife do when she finished speaking to her maid? Jumping a claim. I know that phrase from history books. Or, well, history class. Jumping a claim usually refers to who either stealing someone else's claim of land or trying to get in before for the legal time to get the claim. Or at the very least, being the first one to get the claim. It's usually used whenever you find like mines and whatnot on unowned land. She walked into the breakfast room. On your arm? No, alone. She's very independent in little matters like that. Then after we sat down for 10 minutes or so, she rose hurriedly, muttering some words of apology, and left the room. She never came back. With this maid, Alice, as I understand, the poster says she went to her room, got but her bride's dress and long also, put on a bonnet, and went out. Quite so. She was afterwards seen walking into Hyde Park in company with Flora Miller, a woman who is now in custody and had already made a disturbance at Mr. Donner's house that morning. Oh, ad's coming up. Oh, yes. I should like a few particulars as to this young lady and a relationship to her. Lord St. Simon shrugged his shoulders and raised his eyebrows. We have been on friendly footing for some years. I may say at a very friendly footing. She used to be at the Algero. I have not treated her ungenerously, and she had not just cause of complaint against me. You know what women are, Mr. Holmes. Flora was a dear little thing, but exceedingly hot-headed and devotedly attached to me. She wrote me dreadful letters when she heard I was about to get married. Tell the truth, the reason why I had the marriage celebrated so quietly was that I feared lest there might be a scandal in the church. She came to Mr. Donner's door just after we returned. She endeavored to push her way in. ushering a very abusive expression towards my wife, and even threatening her, and I am foreseeing the possibility of something of the sort. And I had two police fellows there in private clothes who soon pushed her out again. She was quiet when she saw that there was no good in making a row. Alright, with the ad about to start, I shall pause. There it goes. Hi MC, welcome to the stream. Arriving just back in time to get slapped with an ad. The ad says, as soon as I come back. Yeah, you had some hell of a timing. Anyways, I shall. German Army already worked for you. Yeah, I get a few Army recruitment videos too whenever I have ads. Not interested, but. Do 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 do. Oh, he can't hear me. Why am I trying to talk when he can't hear me right now? I just feel silly. Yes, welcome back. Oh, I'll say it clearly whenever this ad expires. And there it goes. Who's back? Oh, right. Welcome back, MC. Yeah, you had some very unfortunate timing getting slapped with that. But welcome, welcome, welcome. But as you can see from the stream title, we're reading The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. With the current story being about a missing bride after the wedding, and like the day of the wedding, her disappearing, and then we're gonna, I guess the mystery is to find out what happened to her, if she's dead, if she's alive, kidnapped, got lost, whatnot. Maybe she got sick of some shit and left. We'll find out. We'll find out.
Did your wife hear all this? No, thank goodness she did not. And she's seen walking with this woman afterwards.
Yes, that is what Mr. Lestrade of Scotland Yard looks upon as so serious. It is thought that Flora decoyed my wife out, laid some terrible trap for her.
Well, it is a possible suspicion.
You think so too?
I do not say a probable one, but you do not yourself look upon this as likely.
I do not think Flora would hurt a fly.
Still, jealousy is a strange transformer of character. Pray, what is your own theory as to what took place?
Oh, really? I came to seek a theory, not a propound one. I've given you all the facts since you asked me. However, I may say that has occurred to me as possible the excitement of this affair, the consciousness that she made so immense of social stride had the effect of causing some little nervous disturbance in my wife.
In short, that she has become suddenly deranged.
Well, really, when I consider that she had turned her back, I will not say upon me, but upon so much that many have aspired to without success, I can hardly explain it in any other fashion.
Well, certainly, that is also a conceivable hypothesis,
said Holmes, smiling.
And now, old Saint Simon, I think that I have nearly all my data. May I ask whether you were seated at the breakfast table so you could see out the window?
We could see the other side of the road in the park.
Quite so. Then I do not think that I need to detain you any longer. I shall communicate with you.
Should you be fortunate enough to solve the problem, said our client, rising.
I have solved it.
Huh? What was that?
I say that I have solved it.
Where then is my wife?
That is a detail which I shall speedily supply.
Lord St. Simon shook his head. I'm afraid that I will not take wiser heads than yours or mine, he remarked, bowing, and in a stately old-fashioned manner he departed.
It is very good of those St. Simon to honour my health by putting it on a level with his own,
said Sherlock Holmes, laughing.
I think that I shall have a whisky and soda and a cigar after all this cross-questioning. I have formed my conclusion as to the case before our client came into the room.
My dear Holmes!
I have notes of several similar cases, though none, as I remarked before, which were quite as prompt. My whole examination served to turn my conjecture into a certainty. Circumstantial evidence is occasionally very convincing, as when you find the throat in the milk, to quote Thoreau's example.
I have heard all that you have heard. I'm going to play and listen to it in the BG. Gotcha. And that's perfectly fine.
Without urban pre-existing cases, which served me so well, there was a parallel instance in Rotterdam some years back, and something done very much on the same lines as mentioned this year after the Franco-Prussian War. It is one of these cases. But hold on, there is. Here's Lestrade. Good afternoon, Lestrade. You will find an excellent tumbler up on the sideboard, and those cigars in the box.
The official detective was attired in a pea jacket and a cravat, which gave him a decidedly nautical appearance. He carried a black canvas bag in his hand. With a short greeting, he seated himself and lit the cigar which had been offered to him.
What's up then?
Holmes, I beg your pardon? I. Hold on. This has to be captured for prosperity. What the fuck? Oh goodness. Okay. That was, of all the things I've read in this, including Watson's continual use of ejaculation as a verb, that's what threw me off the most.
What's up then?
Said Holmes with a twinkle in his eye.
You look dissatisfied.
I am dissatisfied. It's an infernal St. Simon's marriage case. I can make neither heads nor tails of the business.
Really? You surprise me.
Without of a mixed affair. Lusting Argonian maid next. Okay, I know there's like 2 volumes of that, but don't the books in Skyrim only give you like fucking 4 pages and shit? Oh, okay. Whoever had such a mixed affair? Every clue seems to slip through my fingers. I've been out working upon it all day.
And very what it seems to have made you,
said Holmes, laying his hand upon the arm of the pea jacket. Oh no, I plan on reading Skyrim books on stream. I'm sticking with classics for now. Just for now, at least.
Oh, I had goosebumps. I did that. Oh.
During the Halloween season. Yes, I've been dragging in the serpentine.
And here is the name, what for?
And social body of Lady St. Simon. Sherlock Holmes leaned back in his chair and laughed heartily. Do I want to drop by? I don't know. Also, thanks for the hydrate and the stretch. It depends what I'm doing at the time. Get that stretch in. Should be like 2 hours before Azzy. I'm not even awake by then, dude. If I am, it's a miracle. I have alarms set for before then, but trying to actually pull my ass out of bed? Yeah, the time difference. Sherlock Holmes leaned back in his chair and laughed heartily.
Have you tried the base of Targaryen Square Fountain?
He asked.
What do you mean? Because you have just as good chance of finding the lady in that one as the other.
Lestrade shot an angry glance at my companion. I suppose you know all about it, he snarled.
Well, I have only just heard the facts. My mind is made up.
Oh, indeed? You think that the Serpentine plays no part in the matter?
I think it's very unlikely.
And perhaps you'll kindly explain how it is that we found this in it. He opened his bag as he spoke and tumbled to the floor a wedding dress of water silk, a pair of white-stained shoes, and a bride's wreath and veil, all discolored and soaked in water. Thanks for fucking dumping river-soaked clothes onto the fucking sitting room of Sherlock Holmes. Way to be a dick, Lestrade. There, said he, putting a new wedding ring upon the top of the pile. There's a little knot for you to crack, Master Holmes.
Oh, indeed,
said my friends, blowing and blew rings into the air.
Drag them for the Serpentine.
Oh, they're found floating near the margin by the portkeeper. The man identifies her clothes, saying to me that if these clothes were there, the body would not be far off.
By the same brilliant reasoning, every man's body should be found in the neighbourhood of his wardrobe. And pray, when did you hope to arrive at this?
Through this, on some evidence implicating Flora Miller and her disappearance.
I'm afraid that's where you find it difficult.
Are you indeed now? Cried Lestrade with some bitterness. I'm afraid, Holmes, that you're not very practical with your deductions and your inference. You have made 2 blunders in as many minutes. This dress does implicate Miss Flora Miller.
No.
On the dress is a pocket. The pocket's a card case. The card case is a note, and here's the very note. He slapped it down upon the table in front of him. Listen to this. You'll see me when all is ready. Come at once. FHM. Now, I theory all along has been that Lady St. Simon was decoyed away by Flora Miller, and she, with confederates no doubt, was responsible for her disappearance. He has signed with her initials the very note which no doubt quietly slipped into her hand at the door which lured her within their reach."
"Very good, Lestrade," said Holmes, laughing. "You really are very fine indeed. Let me see it."
He looked over the paper in a listless way, but his attention instantly became riveted. He gave a little cry of satisfaction.
"This is indeed important,"
said he. "Ah, you find it so?"
"Extremely so. I congratulate you warmly."
Lestrade rose in triumph. Unfin bit his head to look. "Why," he shrieked, "looking at the wrong side!"
"On the contrary, this is the right side."
"The right side? You're mad! Here's a note written in pencil over here."
"Over here is what appears to be a fragment of a hotel bill, which interests me deeply."
"There's nothing in it. I looked at it before. October 4th, rooms 8 shillings, breakfast 2 shillings, 6. It wasn't drachmas, it was something else. I don't remember it. Oh, denarius. So that's like, what was that the equivalent of? I don't know. 6 denarius. Cocktails 1 shilling. Lunch 2 shillings 6 denarius. It's glass sherry 8 denarius. I see nothing in that.
"Very likely not. It is most important all the same. As to the note, it is important also what the least initials are. So I congratulate you again."
"I've wasted time enough," said Lestrade, on rising. "I believe in hard work, not in sitting by the fire spitting fine theories. Good day, Mr. Holmes. We shall see which gets to the bottom of the matter first." He gathered up the garments, thrust them into the bag, and made for the door.
"Just one hint to you, Lestrade."
Girl pulled Holmes before his rival vanished.
"I will tell you the true solution of the matter. Lady St. Simon is a myth. There is not, and there never has been, any such person."
Lestrade looked sadly at my companion. He then turned to me, tapped his forehead 3 times, shook his head solemnly, and hurried away. He had hardly shut the door behind him when Holmes rose to put on his overcoat.
"There's something in what the fellow says about how the door will work,"
he remarked.
"So I think, Watson, that I must leave you to your papers for a little."
It was 5 o'clock when Sherlock Holmes left me. I had no time to be lonely, for within an hour there arrived a confectioner's man with a very large flat box. This he unpacked with the help of the youth whom he had brought with him, and presently, to my great astonishment, a quite epicurean little cold supper began to be laid out upon our humble lodging-house mahogany. There was a couple of brace of cold old woodcock, a pheasant, a palette de foie gras pie. I'm sorry, foie gras is duck, isn't it? Why is that in a pie? I know meat pies are a thing, and I haven't tried them, but just hearing that it's duck is very, very random. I should probably try actual meat pies. Mincemeat pie, actually, is very deceiving. They don't often have meat in them. Some do, but they're primarily fruit-based. I believe a mixture of spiced fruits is what usually goes into mincemeat pie, if my memory of the subject is correct. Or maybe not spiced, but a mixture of fruits. But having laid out all the luxuries, my 2 visitors vanished away, like the gentlemen of the Arabian Nights, with no explanation save that the things had been paid for and were ordered to this address. Just before 9 o'clock, Sherlock Holmes stepped briskly into the room. His features were gravely set, but there was a light in his eyes which made me think that he had not been disappointed in his conclusions.
"They've laid the supper, then,"
he said, rubbing his hands. You seem to expect company. You have laid for 5.
"Yes, I fancy we'll have some company dropping in,"
said he.
"I'm surprised that Lord St. Simon has not already arrived. Ah, I fancy I hear his steps now upon the stairs."
It was indeed our visitor of the afternoon. He came bustling in, dangling his glasses more vigorously than before, the very perturbed expression upon his aristocratic features.
"My messengers reach you, then?"
asked Holmes. Yes, and I confess the contents startle me beyond measure.
"Have you good authority for what you say?"
"The best possible." Lord St. Simon sank into a chair and passed his hand over his forehead.
"What will the Duke say?"
he muttered.
"When he hears that one of the family's been subjected to such humiliation. It is the purest accident. I cannot allow that there is any humiliation."
"And you look on these things from another standpoint?" "Ah, you look on these things from another standpoint."
"I fail to see that anyone's to blame. I can hardly see how the lady could have acted otherwise, though her abrupt method of doing it would undoubtedly be regretted. Having no mother, she had no one to advise her in such a crisis."
"It was a slight, sir, a public slight," said Lord St. Simon, tapping his fingers upon the table.
"You must make allowances for this poor girl, placed in an unprecedented position."
"I'll make no allowance. Very angry indeed. I've been shamefully used."
"I think that I heard a ring,"
said Holmes.
Yes, there are steps on the landing. I cannot persuade you to take any view of the matter, Lord St. Simon. I brought an applicant here who may be most successful."
He opened the door and ushered in a lady and gentleman.
"Lord St. Simon, allow me to introduce you to Mr. and Mrs. Versay Moulton. The lady I think you have already met."
The sight of our newcomer, our lady, has sprung. Our The sight of these newcomers, our client, had sprung from his seat and stood very erect, with his eyes cast down, his hands thrust into the breast of his frock coat, a picture of the offended dignity. The lady had taken a quick step forward and held out her hand to him, but he still refused to raise his eyes. As well for his resolution, perhaps, for her pleading face was one which had hard to resist.
"You're angry, Robert,"
said she,
"but I guess you've every cause to be."
"Pray, make no apology to me," said Lord St. Simon bitterly.
"Oh, yes, I know I've treated you real bad. I should have spoken to you before I went, but kind of rattled. And the time when I saw Frank here again, I just didn't know what I was doing or saying. I wonder I didn't fall down and do a faint right there before the altar."
"Perhaps,
Mrs. Mullet. Then you like my friend and me to leave the room while I explain this matter."
"If I may give an opinion."
If I may give an
Oh, wait, hold on. This is another gentleman. Let's see here. "If I may give an opinion," remarked the strange gentleman, "we have had just a little too much secrecy over this business already. For my part, I would like all Europe and America to hear the rights of it." He was a small, wiry, sunburnt man, clean shaven, with a sharp face and alert manner.
"And I'll tell you your story right away,"
said the lady.
"Frank here and I met in '84 in McQuire's camp near Rockies, where Paul was working a claim. We were engaged to each other, Frank and I, and one day father struck a rich pocket, made a pile, while poor Frank here had a claim that petered out, came to nothing. The richer Paul grew, the poorer was Frank. So at last Paul wouldn't hear of our engagement lasting any longer, took me away to Frisco. Frank wouldn't throw up his hands so he followed me there, sold me without Paul knowing anything about it. It would only have made him mad to know, so we just fixed it all up for ourselves. Frank said he'd go and make up his party, never come back and claim me until he had as much as Paul. So I promised to wait for him to the end of time, pledged myself not to marry anyone else while he lived. 'Why shouldn't we be married right away then?' said he. 'I feel sure of you, and I won't claim you to be your husband till I come back.' Well, we talked it over, fixed it all up at home nicely, with the clergyman all ready and waiting, and we just did it right there. Frank went off to seek his fortune, and I went back to Paul. Next I heard of Frank, he was in Montana. Oh,
and then he went prospecting in Arizona, and I headed for the New Mexico. After that came a long newspaper story about how a miners' camp been attacked by Apache Indians, and then was my Frank's name among the killed. I fainted dead away, was very sick for months after Paul. Or for months after. Paul thought I had declined, took me to half the doctors in Frisco. Not a word of news came for a year and more, so I doubted if Frank had really died. Or I never doubted if Frank was really dead. Then Lord St. Simon came to Frisco, came to London, and our marriage was arranged. Paul was very pleased. I felt all the time that no man on this earth would ever take place in my heart that given to my poor Frank. Still, if I had married Lord St. Simon, of course I had done my duty by him. We can't command our love, but we can make our actions. I went to the altar with him with the intention to make him just as good a wife as it was in me to be. But you may imagine what I felt when I came into the altar ritual. Wales. I glanced back, saw Frank standing, looking at me out the first pew. I thought it was his ghost at first. I looked again, there he was still, with a kind of question in his eyes, as to ask whether I were glad or sorry to see him. I wonder if I didn't drop. I knew that everything was turning round. Words of clergymen were just like the birds of a bee in my ears. I didn't know what to do. Should I start the service, make a sense of the church? I glanced at him again. He seemed to know what I was thinking, for he raised his finger to his lip, told me to be still. Then I saw him scribble on a piece of paper. Knew he was writing me a note, so I passed the pew on the way. And I dropped my bouquet over to him, and he slipped the note into it. When he returned me the flowers, holding a line asking me to join him when he was made the sign, and to me to do so. Of course, I never doubted for a moment that my first duty was now to him, and I was determined to do just whatever he might direct. When I got back, I told my maid who had known him in California, and had always been his friend. I ordered her to stay, saying nothing, but to get a few things packed and my ulsters ready. I ought to have spoken to Lord St. Simon, but he was dreadful hard before his mother, all those great people. I just made up my mind and ran away, explained afterwards. I hadn't been at the table 10 minutes, before I saw Frank out the window, other side of the road. He beckoned to me, and then began walking in the park. I slipped out, put on my things, followed him. Some woman came talking something or another about Lord St. Simon to me, seemed to me about the little I heard, as if he had a little secret of his own before married. Also, but I managed to get away from her, soon overtook Frank, and we got into the cab together, and away we drove to some lodgings he had taken in Golden Square. That was my true wedding after all these years of waiting. Frank had been a prisoner among the Apaches, escaped. He came on to Frisco, found out I'd given him up for dead, and gone to England. Followed me there, and came home upon me at last the very morning of my second wedding. What voice did I give him? I saw him. I saw it on the paper, explained the American, and gave him the name of the church, but not where the lady lived. Then we had a talk as to what we should do, and Frank was all for openness, but I was so ashamed of it all that I felt that I should like to vanish away, never see any of them again, just sit in the line apart, perhaps to show them I was alive. It was awful for me to think of all the lords and ladies sitting round that breakfast table, waiting for me to come back. So Frank took my wedding clothes, things, made a bundle of them, so that I should not be traced, and be dropped them away somewhere where no one should find them. It is likely we should have gone on to Paris tomorrow, only that this good gentleman, Mr. Holmes, came round us this evening, though how he found us is more than I can think. He showed us very clearly, kindly, that I was wrong, that Frank was right, that we should be putting ourselves in the wrong if we were so secret, and he offered to give us a chance to talk to Lord St. Simon alone, so we can come right round to his rooms at once. Now, Robert, you have heard it all, and I am very sorry if you by giving you pain. Hope that you do not think very meanly of me.
Lord St. Simon had by no means relaxed his rigid attitude, and had listened with a furrowing brow and compressed lips to his long narrative. "Excuse me," he said. "It is not my custom to discuss my most intimate personal affairs in this public manner."
Then you will forgive me. You won't shake hands before I go.
"Oh, certainly, if it would give you any pleasure." He put out his hands and coldly grasped that which she extended to him.
I had hoped, suggested Holmes, that you would join us in a friendly supper.
I think that you ask a little too much, responded his lordship. I may be forced to acquiesce to this recent development, but I can hardly be expected to make merry over them. I think that, with your permission, I will now wish you all a very good night. He included us all in a sweeping bow and stalked out of the room.
Then I trust you will at least will honor me with your company,
said Sherlock Holmes.
It is always a joy to meet an American, Mr. Moulton, for I am one of those who believe that the folly of a monarch and the blundering of a minister in far gone years will not prevent our children from having...
Oh, another ad. Where did I get a notification from? Well, maybe Indy's live, because I know Eno went live earlier. Yeah, Indy's live. This was quite the twist. Kind of sad, but you know how it is with these type of stories.
I think this one's almost done.
Just gonna wait for the ad to finish playing out, and we shall proceed. Oh, Saturday did Tom and Jerry and Nutcracker's Tale. I'll check that out later. All right, ads over. We shall proceed.
In foregone years will not prevent our children from being someday citizens of the same worldwide country under a flag which shall be quarter of the Union Jack, the Stars and Stripes. This case has been an interesting one,
remarked Holmes when our visitors had left,
because it serves to show very clearly how simple the explanations may be of an affair which at first sight seems to be most explicable. Nothing can be more natural than the sequence of events as narrated by this lady, and nothing stranger than the result when viewed, for instance, by Mr. Lestrade of Scotland Yard.
You were not yourself at fault at all, then?
For the first, two facts were very obvious to me. The one, the lady had been quite willing to undergo the wedding ceremony. The other, that she repented of it within a few minutes of returning home.
Hold on.
Obviously, something had occurred there in the morning then to cause her to change her mind. What could that something be? She could not have spoken to anyone when she was out, for she had been in the company of the bridegroom. Had she seen someone then? If she had, it must have been someone from America. She had spent so short a time in this country, that she could hardly have known anyone to acquire so deep an influence over.
God damn it, inconsistent scrolling is really throwing me off.
Over her, that the mere sight of him would induce her to change her plans. So completely, you see, that we have already arrived by the process of exclusion at the idea she might have seen an American. Then who could this American be, and why should she possess so much influence over her? Might be a lover, might be a husband. Her young womanhood had, I knew, had been spent in rough scenes and under strange conditions. So far I had got before I had heard Lord St. Simon's narrative, where he told us of a man in a pew of the change in the bride's manner, of so transparent a device for obtaining a note as the dropping of a bouquet, of her resort to her confidential maid, and of her very significant allusions to claim jumping, which in miners' parlance means taking possession of that which another person has prior claim to. The whole situation.
Yeah, it was stealing a claim. That was it. I was trying hard to remember the exact definition, but yeah. That was one of the ones I suggested, and that one was correct.
She had gone off with a man, and the man was either a lover or a previous husband, the chances being in the favour of the latter.
How in the world did you find them?
It might have been a bit difficult, but Fred Lestrade held information in his hand, the value of which he did not himself know. The initials were, of course, of the highest importance, but more valuable still was it to know that within a week he had settled his bill at one of the most select London hotels.
How did you deduce the select?
By select prices, 8 shillings for a bed, 8 pences for a glass of sherry, voted to the one of the most expensive hotels. There are not many in London which charge at that rate. And the second one which I visited, it in Northumberland Avenue, I learned by the inspections of the book that the Francis H. Moulton, an American gentleman, had left only the day before. And on looking over the entries against him, I came upon the very items which I had seen in the duplicate bill. His letters were to be forwarded to 226 Golden Square. So thither I travelled, and being fortunate enough to find the loving couple at home, I ventured to give them some patronal advice, advice, to point out to them that it would be better in every way that they should make this position a little clearer, both to the general public and to Lord St. Simon in particular. I invited them to meet him here. As you can see, I made him keep the appointment.
But with no very good results, I remarked. His conduct was certainly not very gracious.
Ah, Watson, said Holmes, smiling, perhaps you will not be very gracious either, if after all the trouble of wooing and wedding you found yourself deprived in an instant of a wife and a fortune. I think that we may judge Lord St. Simon very mercifully, and think us stars never likely to find ourselves in the same position. Roll your chair up, and hand me my violin. The only problem we have still to solve is how to while away these bleak autumnal evenings.
All right. That one was a trip.
Yeah.
I guess we're on to story 11, The Adventure of the Barrel Cornet.
Holmes, said I, as I stood one morning in our bow window looking down the street. Here is a madman coming along. It seems rather sad that his relative should allow him to come out alone. My friend rose lazily from his armchair and stood with his hands in the pockets of his dressing gown, looking over my shoulder. It was a bright, crisp February morning, and the snow of the day before still lay deep upon the ground, shimmering brightly in the wintering sun. Down the center of Baker Street it had been ploughed into a brown, crumbly band by the traffic, but at either side and on the heap edges of the footpath still lay as white as when it fell. The grey pavement had been cleaned and scraped, but still dangerously slippery, though there were fewer passengers than usual. Indeed, from the direction of the Metropolitan Station, no one was coming to save the single gentleman whose eccentric conduct had drawn my attention. He was a man about 50, tall, portly, imposing, with a massive, strongly marked face and a commanding figure. He was dressed in a sombre yet rich style, in black frock coat, shining hat, neat brown gaiters, and a well-cut pearly grey trousers. Yet his actions were absurd contrast to the dignity of his dress and features, for he was running hard with the occasional little springs such as a weary man gives who is little accustomed to set any tax upon his legs. As he ran he jerked his hands up and down, wagged his hat, and writhed his face in the most extraordinary contortions. "What on earth can be the matter with him?" I asked. "He's looking up the numbers of the houses."
"I believe that he is coming here,"
said Holmes, rubbing his hands. "Here?"
"Yes, I rather think he's come to insult me professionally. I think that I recognize the symptoms. Ah, did I not tell you?"
As he spoke, the man, and puffing and blowing, rushed at our door, pulled at our bell until the whole house resounded with the clanging. A few moments later he was in our room, still puffing, still gesticulating. What? I was so fixed a look of grief and despair in his eyes that our smiles were turned to an instant of horror and pity. For a while he could not get his words out, but swayed his body and plucked his hair like one who had been driven to extreme limits of his reason. Then suddenly springing to his feet, he beat his head against the wall with such force that we both rushed upon him and tore him away to the center of the room. Sherlock Holmes pushed him down to the easy-chair, and sitting beside him, patted his head and chatted with him in easy, soothing tones which he knew so well how to employ.
"You've come to tell me your story, have you not?"
said he.
"You are fatigued with your haste. Pray, when do you recover yourself? Then I shall be most happy to look into any little problem that you may submit to me."
The man sat for a minute or more with a heaving chest, fighting against his emotion, then passed his handkerchief over his brow, set his lip tight, and turned his face towards us.
"No doubt you think me mad,"
said he.
"I see that you have had some great trouble,"
responded Holmes.
"God knows I have. A trouble which is enough to unseat my reason. So sudden and so terrible it is it. Public disgrace I might have faced, although I am a man whose character has not yet borne a stain. Private afflictions also in the lot of every man. The two coming together, in so frightful a form, has been enough to shake my very soul. Besides, it is not I alone. The very noblest in the land may suffer, unless some way we found out of this horrible affair." "Pray, compose yourself, sir," said Holmes, "and let me have a clear account of who you are and what it is that has befallen you."
"My name," answered our visitor, "is probably familiar to you, yes? I am Alexander Holder, of the banking firm of Holder and Stevenson, at Threadneedle Street. The name was indeed well known to us as belonging to the senior partner in the second largest private banking concern of the city of London. What could have happened, then, to bring one of the foremost citizens of London to this most pitiable pass? We waited, all curiosity, until with another effort he braced himself to tell his story. "I feel that time is of value," said he. "That is why I hasten here, when the police inspector suggested I should secure your cooperation. I came to Baker Street by the Underground, hurried from there on foot. The cabs go slowly through the snow. That's why I was so out of breath. I'm a man who takes very little exercise. I feel badly now. I will put the facts before you, as shortly, and yet as clearly as I can. It is, of course, well known to you that in a successful banking business, as much depends upon our being able to find remutable investments for our funds as upon our increasing a connection lay of our number of disposers or dispositioners. One of our most lucrative means of laying money is in the shape of loans, where security is unimpeachable. We've done a great deal in this direction during the last few years. There are many noble families whom we
have advanced large sums upon the security of their pictures, libraries, or plate. Yesterday morning, I was seated in my office at the bank, when a card was brought to me by one of the clerks. I started when I saw the name, for it was that of none other than, well, perhaps even to you I had better say no more. It was a name which is of a household word all over the earth, one of the highest, noblest, most exhausted names in England. I was overwhelmed by the honor and attempted it when he entered to say so, but he plunged at once into business. I have a man who wishes to hurry quickly through a disagreeable task. Mr. Holder, said he, I have been informed that you are in the habit of advancing money. The firm does so when the security is good, I answered. It is absolutely essential to me, said he, that I should have £50,000 at once. I could, of course, borrow so trifling a sum 10 times over from my friends, but I much prefer to make it a matter of business and carry out that business myself. In my position, you'll readily understand, it is unwise to place oneself under obligations. For how long, may I ask, do you want this sum? I asked. Next Monday I have a large sum due to me, and I shall most certainly repay what you advance, with whatever interest you think is right to charge, but it is very essential to me that the money should be paid at once. I should be happy to advance it without further parley from my own private purse, said I, were it not that the strain would be rather more than it could bear. If, on the other hand, I am to do it in the name of the firm, then in justice to my partner I must insist that even in your case every business-like precaution should be taken. I should much prefer to have it so, said he, raising up a square black morocco case, not like a cigar case of some sort, where he had laid beside his chair. You have doubtless heard of the barrel cornet. One of the most precious public possessions of the empire, said I. Precisely. He opened the case, and there, embedded in a soft flesh-colored velvet, lay the magnificent piece of jewelry which he had named. There are 39 enormous barrels, said he, and the price of the gold chasing is incalculable. Lowest estimate would put the worth of the corrected cornet at double the sum which I ask. I am prepared to leave it with you as my security. I took the precious case into my hand, and I looked in some perplexity from it to my illustrious client. You doubt its value? He asked. Not at all. I only doubt the the prosperity of me leaving it. You may set your mind at rest about that. I should not dream of doing so were it not absolutely certain that I should be able in 4 days to reclaim it. It's a pure matter of form, and it's secure. Is the security sufficient? Oh, is this going to be like a fucking scheme where he had it stolen or someone else stole it? Didn't know it was there. Some kind of a security insurance fraud of sorts. Ample! You understand, Mr. Holder, that I'm giving you a strong proof of the confidence which I have in you, founded upon all that I have heard of you. I rely upon you not only to be discreet and to refrain from all the gossip upon the matter, but above all to preserve the coronet with every possible precaution, because I need not say that it's a great public scandal would be caused if any harm were to befall it. Any injury to it would almost as serious as its complete loss, for there is no barrels in the world to match these, and it would be impossible to replace them. I leave it with you, however, with every confidence. I shall call for it in person on Monday morning. Seeing that my client was anxious to leave, I said no more, but called for my cashier, ordering him to pay over for £50,000 notes. When I was alone once more, however, with the precious case lying upon the table in front of me, could not but think it was some misgivings of an immense responsibility which it entails upon me. There can be no doubt that if it was a national possession, a horrible scandal would ensue if any misfortune should occur to it. I've already regretted having ever consented to taking charge of it. However, it's too late to alter the matter now, so I locked up in my private safe and turned once more to my work. When evening came, I felt that it would be an imprudence to leave so precious a thing in the office behind in me. Banker's safe's been forced before now, and why should not mine be? If so, how terrible would be the position in which I should find myself. I determined, therefore, that for the next few days I would always carry the case backwards and forward with me, so it might never be really out of my reach. With this intention, I called a cab and drove out to my house in the Statham. Carrying the jewel with me, I did not breathe freely until I had taken it upstairs and locked it in the bureau of my dressing room. And now, a word as to my household, Mr. Holmes, for I wish you to thoroughly understand the situation. My groom and my page, they sleep out of the house. I beg your pardon? What do you mean your groom? What? Like a fucking horse caretaker? That's my only assumption here, because that is specifically something used upon a wedding day, not like everyday thing. Unless it's like a, a will-be son-in-law. Well, if they sleep out of the house, it might be someone who cares for horses. Uh, my page sleep out of the house and may be set aside altogether. I have 3 maid-servants who have been with me excuse me, a number of years, whose absolute reliability is quite above suspicion. Another, Lucy Parr, second in waiting maid, has only been in my service a few months. Came with an excellent character, however, and has always given me satisfaction. She's a very pretty girl, and has attracted admirers who occasionally hung about the place. The only drawback which we have ever found to her, but we believe her to be a thoroughly good girl in every way. So much for the servants. My family itself is so small that it will not take me long to describe it. I'm a widower. I have only a son, Arthur. He's been a disappointment to me, Mr. Holmes, a grievous disappointment. I have no doubt that I am myself to blame. People tell me that I have spoiled him. Very likely I have. When my dear wife died, I felt that he was all I had to love. I could not bear to see the smile fade even for a moment from his face. I could never deny to him a wish. Perhaps it had been better for both of us. If I had been sterner, I had meant for the best. It was naturally my intention that he should succeed me in my business. He was not of a business turn. He was wild and wayward. To speak the truth, I could not trust him to the handling of large sums of money. When he was young, he became a member of an aristocratic club. There having charming manners, he was soon the intimate of a number of men with long purses and expensive habits. He learned to play heavily at cards, and to squander money on the turf, until he had again and again come to me and implored him to give him an advance upon his allowance, that he might settle his debts of honor. He tried more than once to break away from the dangerous company in which he was keeping, but each time the influence of his friend, Sir George Burnwell, was enough to draw him back again. And indeed, I could not wonder that such a man as Sir George Burnwell had gained an influence over him, for he was frequently brought him into my house, and I found myself that I could hardly resist the fascination of his manner. He is older than Arthur, a man of the world to his fingertips. He had been everywhere, seen everything, a brilliant talker, a man of great personal beauty. Yet when I think of him in cold blood, far away from the glamour of his presence, I am convinced about his cynical speech, and the look of which I have caught in his eye, that he is one who should be deeply distrusted. So I think, and so too thinks my little Mary, who has a woman's quick insight into character. And now there is only she to be described. She is my niece. And when my brother died 5 years ago, left her alone in the world, I adopted her and looked upon her ever since as my daughter. She is a sunbeam in my house, a sweet, loving, beautiful, wonderful mannered housekeeper, Our wonderful manager and housekeeper, yet as tender and quiet and gentle as a woman could be, she was my right hand. I do not know what I could do without her. In only one matter has she ever gone against my wishes. Twice my boy has asked her to marry him, for he loves her devotedly. Each time she's refused. I think that if anyone could have drawn him into the right path, it would have been her, and his marriage might have changed his whole life. But now, alas, changed his whole life. But alas, it is too late. Forever too late. Nap time go burr. Hi, Ghastly. Welcome to the stream. I hope your nap was very pleasant. Now, Mr. Holmes, you know the people who live under my roof, and I shall continue my miserable story. I'm so sleepy. Hi. Well, my vocals might put you back to sleep then. So that is a risk you have being here. Or is that precisely what you desire? I'll work through it. When we were taking coffee in the drawing room that night after dinner, I told Arthur and Mary my experience of the precious treasure which we had under our roof, surpassing only the name of my client, Lucy Parr, who had brought in the coffee. I am sure left the room. I cannot swear that the door was closed. Mary and Arthur were much interested and wished to see the famous cornet. I thought I'd better not disturb it. "Where have you put it?" asked Arthur. "In my bureau." "Well, I hope to goodness the house won't be burglared during the night," said he. "It is locked up," I answered. "Oh, an old key will fit that bureau. When I was younger, when I was a youngster, I'd open it myself with the key of the box room cupboard." He often had a wild way of talking, so I thought little of what he said. He followed me to my room, however, that night with a very grave face. Hi, Ophelli. Thanks for the hydrate and the stretch. Let's get that in. Also, an ad might play soon. Herlock Schmomes. Let me get that stretch in. Dang, ASMR groans between readings. Man, I should read my Sherlock Holmes book more. Anyways, welcome. We're on story 11 of this collection. So it's going to be this one and one more, and then this collection will be complete. Anyways, where was I? What's the name of the case? Let me scroll back up. Air Detective. The Adventure of the Barrel Coronet. The Adventure of my inconsistent fucking scrolling. I swear to God. I forgot I only watched the series Sherlock with and stopped after the Scarlet Study. Well, I'll tell you what, I have VODs of me reading the other Sherlock Holmes stories up till now. I'm trying to read them in chronological order. So I have recorded as VODs on my YouTube channel The Studying Scarlet, The Sign of the Four, and then this collection, which is The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Yes, I do. It's linked both on my Twitter and on my Twitch. It's here. Oh, there's the ad. Hold on. Alright, I've returned, and in order to settle this, because I think I might need to log into Stream Elements again. And so, in order to give you a direct link in chat, here you go. Doo-doo. That is my YouTube channel. I upload my VODs there. Done. I did the sparkly button. Awesome. Anyways, where was I? Please proceed, oh great streamer. Trying to find my place. After I scrolled up, I had to scroll down, re-find my place here. It often had a wild way of talking, so I thought but little of what he said. He followed me to my room, however, that night, but with a very grave face. "Look here, Dad," said he, with his eyes cast down, "can you let me have £200?" "No, I cannot," I answered sharply. "I have been far too generous with you in money matters." "You have been very kind," said he, "but I must have this money, or else I can never show my face inside the club again." "And a very good thing, too," I cried. "And yes, but you would not have me leave it a dishonoured man," said he. "I cannot bear the disgrace. I must raise the money in some way, and if you will not let me have it, then I must try other means."
I was very angry, for this was the third demand during the month. You shall not have a farthing from me, I cried, on which he bowed and left the room without another word. When he was gone, I unlocked my bureau, made sure that my treasure was safe, and locked it again. Then I started to go around the house, see that all was secure, duty which I usually leave to Mary, but I thought it should well be performed myself that night. When I came down the stairs, I saw Mary herself at the side window of the hall, which she closed and fastened as I approached. "Tell me, Dad," said she, looking, I thought, a little disturbed, "did you give Lucy the maid leave to go out tonight?" "Certainly not. She came in just now by the back door. Had no doubt she had only been to the side gate to see someone, but I thought this is hardly safe. Should be stopped. You must speak to her in the morning, or I will. Well, if you prefer it. Are you sure that everything is fastened?" "Quite sure, Dad." "Then good night." I kissed her and went up to my bedroom again, where I soon fell asleep. I am endeavored to tell you everything, Mr. Holmes, which may have any bearing upon the case, but I beg that you will question me upon any point which I do not make clear.
On the contrary, your statement is singularly lucid.
I came to a part in my own story now in which I would wish to be particularly so. I am not very heavy. I'm not a very heavy sleeper. The anxiety in my mind tended, no doubt, to make me even less so than usual. About 2 in the morning, then I awake by someone around the end of the house. It ceased her. I was wide awake. I had left an impression behind. It has, though the windows are gently closed somewhere. I lay listening with all my ears. Suddenly, to my horror, there was a distinct sound of footsteps moving softly in the next room. I slipped out the bed, all palpitating with fear, peeped round the corner. My dressing-room door. "Arthur," I screamed, "you villain, you thief, how dare you touch that cornet?" The gas was half up as I had left it. My unhappy boy, dressed only in his shirt, trousers, and standing beside the light, holding the cornet in his hand, appeared to be wrenching at it, or bending it with all his strength. At my cry, he dropped it from his grasp and turned as pale as death, snatched it up and examined it. One of the gold corners with 3 of the barrels in it was missing. "You blackguard!" I had shouted, myself with rage. "You have destroyed it. You have dishonored me forever. Where are the jewels which you have stolen?" "Stolen!" he cried. "Yes, thief!" I roared, shaking him by the shoulder. "There are none missing. There cannot be any missing," said he. "There are 3 missing. You know where they are. Must I call you a liar as well as a thief? Did I not see you trying to tear off another piece? You have called me names enough," said he. "I will not stand it any longer. I shall now say another word about this business, since you have chosen to insult me. I will leave your house in the morning and make my own way in the world. Shall leave this house in the hands of the police," I cried, half mad with grief and rage. "I shall have this matter probed to the bottom." "You shall learn nothing from me," said he with a passion such I should not have thought within his nature. "If you call the police, let the police find what they can." By this time the whole house was astir, for I had raised my voice in my anger. Mary was the first to rush from my room, and at the sight of the cornet and of Arthur's face she read the whole story with a scream, fell down senseless on the floor. "Now, Mary, I think you're overreacting." I sent the housemaid for the police and put the investigation in their hands at once. When the inspector and a constable entered the house, Arthur, who had stood sullenly with his arms folded, asked me whether it was my intention to charge him with theft. I answered it had ceased to be a private matter, but had become a public one, since the ruined cornet was national property. I was determined that the law should have its way in everything. "At least," said he, "you will not have me arrested at once. Be to your advantage as well as mine if I might leave the house for 5 minutes. Now you may get away, or perhaps you may conceal what you have stolen," said I, and then realizing the dreadful position in which I was placed, implored him to remember that not only my honor, but that of one who was far greater than I was at stake. He threatened to raise a scandal which would convulse the nation. He might avert it all if he would but tell me what he had done with the 3 missing stones. "You may as well face the matter," said I, "that you have been caught in the act, and no confession could make your guilt more heinous. If you make any
reparations as in your power by telling us where the barrels are, all shall be forgiven and forgotten. Said I is Watson or Sherlock? I'm trying to catch who you are by the voice. This is actually the client. He's telling this entire story. That's why I'm using the same voice even for separate characters, because it is him telling the story to Holmes and Watson at this current time. He's an elderly gentleman, about 50-ish. He works in a bank where this was put up as collateral for a loan of £50,000, but it has a value of at minimum £100,000.
Holmes's voice is more akin to this.
And Watson's is more akin to this. At least for the ones that I use. Aw, that's sweet. Where was I? If you but make such reparation as in your power by telling us where the barrels are, all shall be forgiven and forgotten. Keep your forgiveness for those who ask for it, he answered, turning away from me with a sneer. I saw that he was too hardened for any words of mine to influence him. There was but one way for it. I called in the inspector, gave him into custody. Search was made at once, not only of his person, but of his room, and every portion of the house where he could have possibly concealed the gems. No trace of them could have been found, nor would the wretched boy open his mouth for all precautions and our persecutions and our threats. This morning he was removed to a cell, and I, after going through all the police formalities, have hurried round to you to implore you to use your skills in unraveling the matter. Police have openly confessed they can at present make nothing of him. You may go at any expense which you think necessary, but we offered a reward of £1,000. My God, what shall I do? Lost my honor, my gems, my son in one night. Oh, what shall I do? He put his hands on either side of his head, and rocked himself to and fro, droning to himself like a child whose grief had gone beyond words. Sherlock Holmes sat silent for a few minutes, with his brow knitted and his eyes fixed upon the fire.
Do you receive much company?
He asked. None save my partner with his family and an occasional friend of Arthur's. Sir George Burnswell has been several times lately. No one else, I think.
Do you go out much in society?
Arthur does. Mary and I stay at home. We neither of us care for it.
That is unusual in a young girl.
She's of a quiet nature. Besides, not so young. She's 24.
This matter, from what you say, it seems to have been a shock to her also.
Terrible. She's even more affected than I.
You've neither of you any doubts as to your son's guilt.
How can we have when I saw with my own eyes the cornet in his hands?
I hardly consider that to be conclusive proof. Was the remainder of the cornet at all injured?
Yes, it was twisted.
Do not think, then, that he might have been trying to straighten it.
God bless you. You're doing what you can for me, but it's too heavy to task. What was he doing there and all? If his purpose was innocent, why did he not say so?
Precisely. And if it were guilty, why did he not invent a lie? His silence appears to cut both ways. There are several singular points about the case. What do the police think of the noise when you awoke you from your sleep?
They consider that it might be caused by Arthur's closing his bedroom door.
A likely story. As if a man built on felony would slam his door so as to wake a household. What did they say then of the disappearance of the gems?
They are still sounding the plank and probing the furniture in the hopes of finding them.
Have they thought of looking outside the house?
Yes, they'd shown extraordinary energy. The whole garden's already been minutely examined.
Now, my dear sirs, said Holmes, is it not obvious that you now that it's the matter really strikes very much deeper than either you or the police were first inclined to think? It appears to you to be a simple case. To me, it is extraordinarily complex. Consider what it is involved by your theory. You suppose your son came down from his bedroom, went the greatest to your dressing room, opened your drawer, took out your cornet, broke off by main force a small portion of it, went off to some other place, concealed 3 gems of the 39, which such skill that nobody can find them, then returned with the other 36 to the room in which he exposed himself to the greatest danger of being discovered. I ask you now, is such a theory tenable?
He sounds so Russian trying to adopt British accent. It's hilarious. I was just trying to make him sound deep and gravelly. But I guess that just makes him sound kind of Russian. But what a he sure is deep and gravelly, kind of good on him. Well, what other is there? Cried the banker with a gesture of despair. If his motives were innocent, why does he not explain them?
It is all task to find out, replied Holmes. So now, if you please, Mr. Holder, we will set off for the strengthens together, and devote an hour to glancing a little or more closely into details.
My friend insisted upon my accompanying them in their expedition, which I was eager to do, for my curiosity and sympathies were deeply stirred by the story to which I had listened. I confess that the guilt of the banker's son appeared to me to be as obvious as it did his unhappy father, but I still had such faith in Holmes's judgment that I felt there might be some grounds for hope as long as he was dissatisfied with the accepted explanation. He hardly spoke a word the whole time out to the southern suburb, but sat with his chin upon his breast and his hat drawn over his eyes, sunk in the deepest thought. Our client appeared to have taken fresh heart at the glimpse of hope which had been presented to him, and even broke into a desultory chat with me over his business affairs. A short railway journey and a shorter walk brought us to Fairbank, the modest residence of the great financier. Oh, welcome, welcome. Glad you can make it, Lisa. Or is it Elisa? I don't know. It looks like Lisa with a Y. Or with an I. Why did I say an I? A Y. Oh wait, no. Now I know why it's a Y. Pretty voice man. Glad you're enjoying it. Anyways, welcome, welcome. Fairbank was a good-sized square house of white stone, standing back a little from the road. A double-carriage sweep with a snow-clad lawn stretched down in front and 2 large iron gates, with closed to the entrance. On the right side was a small old wooden thicket, which led into a narrow pass between 2 neat hedges stretching from the road to the kitchen door and forming the tradesman's entrance. Such a soothing voice to listen to at 1 a.m. Aww.
Well, perhaps it can help you sleep.
Going to bed listening to a bedtime story. Followed by keyboard smash. On the more like an aggressive phone smash. Not entirely sure why. On the left ran a lane which led to the stables, and was not itself within the grounds at all. Don't deep voice surprise me like that. But I thought you might enjoy it. not itself within the grounds at all, being a public, though little used, therefore, or thoroughfare. Holmes left us standing at the door and walked slowly all round the house, across the front and down the tradesman's path, and so round by the garden behind into the stable lane. So long was he that Mr. Holder and I went to the dining room and waited by the fire until he should return. In fact, I see you're leaned to the side while you do it. It makes me giggle.
Well, I'm somewhat leaning into the mic whenever I try to really perform something soothing.
That's my respect of your voice. Bother the reading. It's fine, it's fine. We were sitting there in silence when the door opened, and a young lady came in. She was rather above the middle height, slim, with dark hair and eyes which seemed to be darker against the absolute pallor of her skin. I do not think that I have ever seen such a deadly paleness in a woman's face. Her lips, too, were bloodless, but her eyes were flushed with crying. As she swept silently into the room, she impressed me with a greater sense of grief than the banker had done in the morning. It was more striking in her, as she evidently a woman of strong character, with immense capacity for self-restraint. Disregarding my presence, she went straight to her uncle and passed her hand over his head with a sweet womanly caress.
You have given orders that Arthur should be liberated, have you not, Dad?
She asked.
Now, my girl, the matter must be probed to the bottom.
But I'm so sure that he's innocent. You know what women's instincts are. I know he's done no harm, that you would be sorry for having acted so harshly.
Why is he silent, then, if he is innocent?
Who knows? Perhaps because he was so angry you should suspect him.
How could I help suspecting him, when I actually saw him with the coin in his hand?
But he did. But he had only picked it up to look at it. Oh, do take my word for it that he's innocent. The matter drops, say no more. It's so dreadful to think of dear Arthur in prison.
I shall never let it drop until the gems are found. Never, Mary. Your affection for Arthur blinds you to the awful consequences to me. Far from hushing the thing up, I've brought a gentleman down from London to inquire more deeply into it.
This gentleman?
She asked, facing round to me.
No, his friend. He wishes to leave him alone. He's round in the stable lane now.
Stable lane?
Raised her dark eyebrows.
What could he hope to find there? This, I suppose, is he. I trust, sir, that you will succeed in proving that I feel sure is the truth that my cousin Arthur is innocent of the crime.
I fully share your opinion, and I trust with you that we may prove it,
returned Holmes, going back to the mat to knock the snow from his shoes.
I believe I have the honour of addressing Miss Mary Holder. Might I ask you a question or two?
Pray do, sir. It is more help to clear the whole horrible affair.
You've heard nothing yourself last night.
Nothing, till my uncle here began to speak loudly. I heard that, and I came down.
You shut up the windows and doors the night before. Do you fasten all the windows?
Yes.
Were they all fastened this morning?
Yes.
You have a maid who was a sweetheart. I think that you remarked to your uncle last night that she had out to see you.
Yes, and she was the girl who waited in the drawing room, whom I have heard uncle's remarks about the coronet.
I see. You infer that she may have gone out to tell her sweetheart to do a planned robbery.
All is good of all the vague theory.
Oh, wait, wrong voice.
What is the good of all these vague theories?
Cried the banker impatiently.
No, I told you that I saw Arthur with the coronet in his hand. Wait a little, Mr. Holder. Mr. Holder. We must come back to that. About this girl, Miss Holder. You saw her return by the kitchen door, I presume.
Yes, we're all to see if the door was fastened for the night. Met her stepping in. Saw the man too in the gloom.
Do you know him?
Oh, yes. He's the engrosser who brings our vegetables round. His name's Francis Prosper.
He stood, said Holmes, to the left of the door, that is to say, further up the path than necessary to reach the door.
Yes, he did.
And he's a man with a wooden leg?
Something like a fear sprang up in the young lady's expressive black eyes.
Why, you're a lucky magician,
said she.
How'd you know that?
She smiled. There was no answering smile in Holmes's thin, eager face.
I should be glad now to go upstairs. I shall probably wish to go over the outside of the house again. Perhaps I'd better take a look at the lower windows before I go up.
He walked swiftly round from one to the other, pausing only at the large one which had looked from the hall to the stable lane. This he opened and made a very careful examination of the sill in his powerful magnifying lens.
Now we shall go upstairs,
said he at last. The baker's dressing room was a plainly furnished little chamber, with a grey carpet and a large bureau, and a long mirror. Holmes went up to the bureau first, and looked hard at the lock.
Which key was used to open it?
He asked. That's what my son himself indicated, that in the cupboard in the lumber room.
Have you it here?
That is it on the dressing room. Holy did not fall asleep.
It's fine to fall asleep to my voice, MC. I tried to make this relaxing after all.
Sherlock Holmes took it up and opened the bureau.
"'Tis a noiseless lock,"
said he. Oh, thanks, Doppel. You're welcome.
It's no wonder that it did not wake you. This case, I presume, contains the coronet. We may have a look at it.
He opened the case and looked at the diadem. He laid it upon the table. It was a magnificent specimen of the jeweller's art, and 36 stones were the finest that I have ever seen. Heavy British accent. How'd you know that? Are you a magician?
She's like, no, I'm simply too smart for you.
At one side the coronet with a cracked edge, with a corner holding 3 gems had been torn away.
Now, Mr. Holder,
said Holmes,
here's the corner which corresponds to that which has been unfortunately lost. May I beg that you will break it off?
Bro, what a familiar word. It's unfamiliar to me, but I'm assuming it's a type of safe, based on the way this is described. The banker recoiled in horror. I should not dream of it, said he.
Then I will.
Holmes suddenly bent his strength upon it, but without result.
I feel it give a little,
said he.
But though I am extremely strong in the fingers, it would take me all my time to break it. An ordinary man could not do it. Now, what do you think would happen if I did break it, Mr. Holder? There would be a noise like a pistol shot. Do you tell me that all this happened within a few yards of your bed? You heard nothing of it?
Oh, it's a desk. I see. Or an office. I know about the office definition, but in this story, it is exclusively referred to it as in the context of a piece of furniture. So, I'm guessing it's a desk in this case. I should have slept. I should sleep. Almost 2 a.m. Yeah, you should go back to sleep, MC.
And with your sleep, I wish you pleasant dreams. Good night.
I do not know what to think. It's all dark to me.
But perhaps it may grow lighter as we go. What do you think, Miss Holder?
Like your face lost to share my uncle's perplexity.
The son has no shoes or slippers on when you saw him.
He had nothing on save all these trousers and shit.
Thank you. We have certainly been favored with extraordinary luck during this inquiry. It'll be entirely our own fault if we do not succeed in clearing the matter up. With your permission, Mr. Holder, I shall now continue my investigation outside.
He went alone at his own request, for he explained that any unnecessary footmarks may make his task more difficult. For an hour or more he was at work, returning at last with his feet heavy with snow and his features as inscrutable as ever.
I think that I have seen now all there is to see, Mr. Holder, said he. I can serve you best by returning to my rooms.
But the gems, Mr. Holmes, where are they?
I cannot tell.
The banker wrung his hands. I shall never see them again, he cried. My son, you give me hopes.
My opinion is in no way altered.
Then for God's sake, what was this dark business which has acted in my house last night?
If you can call upon me at my Baker Street rooms tomorrow morning between 9 and 10, I should be able to do what I can to make it clear. I understand that you give me a carte blanche to act for you, but it is only that I get back the gems, that you place no limit on the sum that I draw.
Oh, got another ad. That would sound good right now. Pringles. And then again, I have Sundae. I'll probably chow on some of that later. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. I really need to get those Monsters vs. Alien quotes for the Redeems. I fucking love that movie. It's bad, but it's still bad in an enjoyable way. And God, it has so many memeable parts that it's a crime they weren't mean to more or at all. All right, ad is over. There he goes. I would give my fortune to have them back.
Very good. I shall look into the matter between this and then. Goodbye. It is possible that I may have to come over here again before evening.
It was obvious to me that my companion's mind was now made up about the case, though what his conclusions were more than I could even dimly imagine. Several times during our homeward journey I endeavored to sound him upon the point, but he always glided away to some other topic, until at last I gave it over in despair. I was not yet there when we found ourselves in our rooms once more. Or it was not yet there. He hurried to his chamber and was down again in a few minutes, dressed in a common loafer, with his collar turned up, his shiny seedy coat, his red cravat, and his worn boots. He was a perfect example of the class.
I should think that they should do,
said he, glancing into the glass above the fireplace.
I really wish you could come with me, Watson, but I fear it won't do. I may be on the trail in this matter, or I may be following a will-o'-wisp, but I shall soon know which it is.
How do you know what a will-o'-wisp is? Damn, that's a... Damn, Holmes, that's actually kind of obscure for your time.
I hope that I may be back in a few hours.
He cut a slice of beef in the joint upon the sideboard, sandwiched it between 2 rounds of bread, and thrusting his rude meal into his pocket, he started off upon his expedition.
Behold, a sandwich.
I had just finished my tea when he returned, evidently in excellent spirits, swinging an old elastic side boot in his hand. What even is a will-o'-wisp? It's actually will-o'-the-wisp. Right. It's type ghost fire. They usually appear as small balls of flame, or glowing orbs of light.
You were reminded of something for it? Good, good, good.
He chucked it down into a corner and helped himself to a cup of tea.
Did we now? Hmm.
I looked in as I passed, said he, but I was going right on.
Where to?
On the other side, out of the West End. It may be some time before I get back. Don't wait up for me in case I should be late.
How are you getting on?
Oh, so. Nothing to complain of. I've been out to Stantham since I saw you last, but I do not call it the house. It's a very sweet little problem. I would not have missed it for a good deal. However, I must not sit gossiping here. Must be get these disreputable clothes off and return to a highly respectable self.
Probably during your game with Mona Lisa and England being invaded. Ah, okay, okay. When the hell did I use Will o' the Wisp then? I mean, from your description, it sounds, because we technically haven't been to England, but Da Vinci was there for the Camelot chapter, which is technically in the Middle East, but I understand what you were trying to say there. Based on the context, I was able to reconstruct it. Because we haven't gotten to Avalon on stream. Aw, thanks. I try. I fail, but I try. I just know a little of a lot of things.
And return to my highly respectable self.
I could see by his manner that he had stronger reasons for satisfaction than his words alone would imply. His eyes twinkled, and there was even a touch of color upon his sallow cheeks. He'd hastened upstairs, and a few minutes later I heard the slam of the hall door, which told me that he had off once more upon his conjectural hunt.
Foot and Will o' Wisp are two different translations. I haven't heard that first translation.
I waited until midnight, but there was no sign of his return, so I retired to my room. It was no uncommon thing for him to be away for days and nights on end, when he was hot upon a scent, so that his lateness caused me no surprise. I do not know at what hour he came in. When I came down to breakfast in the morning, there he was with a cup of coffee in one hand, and the paper in the other, as fresh and trim as possible.
You'll excuse my beginning without you, Watson, said he. But you remember that our client has a rather early appointment this morning.
Why, it is after 9 now, I answered. I should not be surprised if that were he. I thought I heard a ring. It was indeed our friend the financier. I was shocked by the change which had come over him, for his face, which was naturally of a broad and massive mould, would now pinch and fallen in, while his hair seemed to me a little shade whiter. He entered with weariness and lethargically, as he was even more painful than his violence of the morning before, and he dropped heavily into the armchair which I pushed forward for him. I do not know what I have done so severely to be so severely tired, said he. Only 2 days ago I was a happy, prosperous man, without a care in the world. I am left so lonely in dishonourable age. One sorrow comes close upon the heels of another. My niece Mary has deserted me.
Deserted?
Deserted? Or who's saying this? It's probably Holmes.
Deserted you?
Yes, her bed this morning had not been slept in. The room was empty. A note for her lay upon the hall table. I said to her last night, in sorrow and not in anger, that if she had married my boy, all might have been well with him. Perhaps I had thought of less of me to say so. It's so that remark that she refers to this in this note.
Yeah, dude, the fuck?
My dearest uncle, I feel it brought terrible upon you, that if I had acted differently, this terrible misfortune might never have occurred. I cannot, with this thought in my mind, ever again be happy under your roof, for I fear I must leave you forever. Do not worry about my future, for I is provided for, and above all, do not search for me, for it will be a fruitless labour, and ill service to me. In life or in death, I am ever your loving Mary.
What can she mean by this note, Holmes? Do you think it points to suicide?
No, nothing of the kind. That's the best possible solution, I trust, Mr. Holder. You are nearing the end of your troubles.
Ah, you say so. You'd heard of... You have heard something, Mr. Holmes. You've learned something. Where are the gems?
You will not think of $1,000 apiece is an excessive sum for them.
I would pay 10.
That would be unnecessary. 3,000 will cover the matter. But there is a little reward, I fancy. Here, your checkbook. Here's a pen. Better make it out for 4,000.
The dazed face of the banker made up the required check. Holmes walked over to his desk, took out a triangular piece of gold with 3 gems on it, and threw it down upon the table. With a shriek of joy, our client clutched it up. You have it, he gasped. I'm saved! I'm saved! Reaction of joy was as passionate as his grief had been, and he hugged his recovered gems to his bosom.
There is one other thing you owe, Mr. Holder,
said Sherlock Holmes rather sternly. Ah! He caught up a pen. Name the sum, and I will pay it.
No, then it is not to me. You owe very humble apology to that noble lad, your son, who has carried himself in this matter. And so you should be proud to see my own son do, should I have a chance to have one.
And is not Arthur who took it?
I told you yesterday, and I repeat today, that it is not.
You are sure of it? Let us hurry to him at once. Let him know the truth is known.
He knows it already. When I cleared it all up, I had an interview with him. Finding that he would not tell me the story, I told it to him, on which he had to confess that I was right. To add the few details was not yet quite clear to me. Your news of this morning, however, may open his lips.
For heaven's sake, tell me, what is this extraordinary mystery?
I'll do so. I'll show you the steps by which I reached it. And let me say to you first, that which is the hardest for me to say, for you to hear. There has been understandings between Sir George Burnwell and your niece Mary. They have now fled together.
My Mary? Impossible!
It is unfortunately more possible. It is certain. Neither you nor your son knew the true character of this man when you admitted him into your family circle. He was one of the most dangerous men in England, a ruined gambler, an absolutely desperate villain, a man without heart or conscience. Your niece knew nothing of such men when he breathed his vows to her, as he had done to 100 before her. She flattered herself, and she alone had touched his heart. The devil knows best what he said, but unless she become his tool, of the habit of seeing him nearly every evening.
I cannot, I will not believe it, cried the banker with an ashen face.
I will tell you then what occurred in your house last night. Your niece, when you had, as she thought, gone to your room, stooped down, talked to her lover through the window, which led to the stable lane. His footmarks had pressed right through the snow, so long had he stood there. She told him of the cornet, his wicked lust for gold kindled all his news, and he bent her to his will. I have no doubt that she loved you, but there are no women in whom the love of a lover extinguishes all other love. I think that she must have been one. She had hardly listened to his instructions, and when she saw you coming downstairs, on which she closed the window rapidly, told you about one of the servants' escapades with her wooden-legged lover, which was all perfectly true. Your boy Arthur went to bed after his interview with you, but he slept badly on account of his uneasiness about his club debts. In the middle of the night, he heard a soft tread and passed his door. As he rose, looking out, he was surprised to see his cousin walking very stealthily along the passage till she disappeared into the dressing room. Petrified with astonishment, the lad slipped out on some clothes and waited there in the dark to see what would come of the strange affair. Presently, she emerged from the room again. In the light of the passage lamp, your son saw that she carried the precious cornet in her hands. She passed down the stairs, as through which she could see what passed in the halls beneath. He saw her stealthily open the window, and out the cornet to someone in the gloom, and closing it once more, hurriedly back into her room, passing quite close to where he stood, hidden behind the curtain. As the machine was on the scene, He could not take any action without a horrible exposure of the woman whom he loved. But in the instant that she was gone, he realized how crushing a misfortune this would be for you, and how all important it was to set it right. He rushed down just as he was, in his bare feet, opened the window, sprang into the snow, and went down the lane where he could see a dark figure in the moonlight. Sir George Burningwell tried to get away, but Arthur caught him.
Have a good night, Doppel, and good reading. Mwah. Aw, thanks, Ophelia.
Have a pleasant evening. Good night, and sweet dreams.
Aw, thanks for the hydrate.
But Arthur caught him, and there was a struggle between them, young lad tugging.
Still not asleep. What a drama.
Your lad tugging at one side of the cornet, and his opponent at the other. At the scuffle, your son struck Sir George, and caught him over the eye. Then something suddenly snapped, and your son, finding that he had the cornet in his hand, rushed back, closed the window, and ascended in your room. I had just observed that the cornet had been twisted in the struggle, was endeavouring to straighten it when you appeared upon the scene.
It is possible? Gasped the banker.
You then roused his anger by calling him names at the moment when he felt he had deserved your warmest thanks. You cannot explain the true state of affairs without betraying the one who certainly deserved little enough consideration at his hands. In thought, the most civilized view, however, he preserved her secret.
That's why she shrieked and fainted when she saw the cornet, cried Mr. Holder. Oh my God, what a blind fool I've been! This asking to be allowed to go out for 5 minutes. Dear fellow wanted to see if the missing piece was at the scene of the struggle. How cruelly I've misjudged him!
When we arrived at the house, I at once went very carefully round it to observe that there were traces on the snow which might help me. I knew that none had fallen since the evening before, and also that there had been a strong frost to preserve impressions. I passed through the tradesman's path. I found it all trampled down and indistinguishable. Just beyond it, however, the far side of the kitchen door, a woman had stood, talked with a man. His round impressions on one side showed he had a wooden leg. I couldn't even tell that they had been disrupted, for the woman had run back swiftly to the door, as was shown by the deep toe and heel marks, while the wooden leg had waited a little, and then gone away. I thought at the time this might be the maid and her sweetheart, of whom you had already spoken to me. Inquiry showed it was so. I passed around the garden without seeing anything more than random tracks, which I took to the police, but when I got to the stable lane, a very long, complex story was written in the snow in front of me. There were double lines of tracks and a booted man, a second double line which I saw with the light belonged to a man with naked feet, but though once convinced from what you had told me that the latter was your son, the first had walked both ways, the other had ran swiftly, as his tread marks was marked in paces over the depression of the boot. It was obvious he had passed after the other. I followed them up and found they led to the hall window, where Boots had worn all the snow away while waiting. Then I walked to the other end, which was 100 yards or more down the lane. I saw more Boots. Boots had faced round, where the snow was cut up as though there had been a struggle, and finally, where a few drops of blood had fallen. To show me that I was not mistaken, Boots had then run down the lane. Another little smudge of blood had shown that he who had been hurt. When he came to the high road at the other end, I found the pavement had been cleared, so there was an end to that clue. On entering the house, however, I examined, as you remember, the sill and framework of the hall window with my lens. I could at once see that someone had passed out. I could distinguish the outline of an instep with the wet foot had been placed in coming in. I was then beginning to be able to form an opinion as to what had occurred. A man had waited outside the window. Someone had brought the gin. The deed had been overseen by your son, and he had pursued the thief, had struggled with him, and they had tugged at the cornet. Their united strength caused injury, which neither alone could have effected. He had returned with his prize. He had left a fragment of the grasp of his opponent. So far I was clear. The question now was the man who was brought in the coronet. It is an old maximum of mine, in that when you had excluded the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
Ah, there it is. There's the line. Or there's a line, but it is one of his most famous statements.
Now, I know, or I knew that it was not you who brought it down. So there was only me and your niece and the maids. But if it were the maids, why would your son allow himself to be accused in the place? There could be no possible reason. As he loved his cousin, however, there was an excellent explanation why he would retain her secret, the more so if the secret was a disgraceful one. I remember that you had seen her at that window, how she had fainted on seeing the coronet again, and my conjecture became certainty. And who could it be who was her confederate? A lover, evidently, for whoever else could outweigh the love and gratitude which she must feel to you. I knew that you went out little, and that your circle of friends was a very limited one, but among them was Sir George Burnwell. I had heard him before as being a man of evil reputation among women. Must have been he who had wore those boots and retained the missing gems. Even though he knew that Arthur had discovered him, he might still falter himself that he was safe, for the lad could not say a word without compromising his own family. Well, your own good sense will suggest what measures I took next. I went in the shape of a loafer to Sir George's house, managed to pick up an acquaintance with his valet, learned that his master had cut his head the night before, and finally, at the expense of 6 shillings, made all sure by buying a pair of his cast-off shoes. With these, I journeyed down to the Streatham, saw they exactly fit the tracks. I saw an ill-dressed vagabond in the lane yesterday evening, and cried Mr. Holder. Precisely, it was I. I found that I had my man, so I came home and changed my clothes. The delicate part at which I had to play. Then I saw the prosecution must avoid it to avert scandal. I knew that so astute a villain would see that our hands were tied in the matter. I went to assault him. At first, of course, he denied everything. When I gave him every particular that occurred, he tried to bolster and took down a life-preserver from the wall. I knew my man, however. I clapped a pistol to his head before he could strike. And then he became a little more reasonable. I told him that he could give me a price for the stones he held, 1,000 apiece. That brought out the first sign of grief that he had shown. Why, dash it all, he said, I'll let them go at 600 for 3. I soon managed to get the address of the receiver who had them on promising him that there could be no prosecution. Off I set to him. After much chaffering, I got our stones at 1,000 apiece, and then I looked in upon your son. I told him that all was right, and eventually got to my bed, and 2 o'clock after what I must call a really hard day's work.
Day has been saved England from a great public scandal, said the banker, rising. Sir, I cannot find words to thank you, but you shall not find me ungrateful for what you've done. Your skill has indeed exceeded all that I have heard of it. I must fly to my dear boy to apologize to him for the wrong which I have done him. To what to tell of poor Mary goes to my very heart. Not even your skills can inform me where she is now.
I think that we may safely say that she is wherever Sir George Burnwell is, and is equally certain that, whatever her sins are, they will soon receive a more sufficient punishment.
The words of Mr. Popo, she did! Or going to be.
All right, that is the end of story 11. Thanks for the hydrate. We just have one more. Story 12, The Adventure of the Copper Breeches. Breeches? Bitches? No, it can't be bitches. Before I pass out, I have to remind you to take care of yourself. Aw. That's sweet. No bitchiness for them.
Yeah, it's Beeches. Alright, let's begin.
The man who loves art for his own sake,
Remarked Sherlock Holmes, tossing aside the advertisement sheet of the Daily Telegram, or Telegraph.
it is frequently, and at the least important and lowliest manifestations, the keenest pleasures to be derived. It is pleasant to me to observe, Watson, that you so far grasped this truth, that in these little records of our cases, which you have been good enough to draw up, and I am bound to say, occasionally to embellish, you have given prominence not so much to the many causes as sublers and sensational trials in which I have figured, but rather to those incidents which may have been trivial in themselves, but which have given room to these faculties of deduction and of logic synthesis which I have made my special province.
Is the type of tree. Good to know. Ah, and yet, said I, smiling, I cannot quite hold myself absolved from the charges of sensationalism which has been urged against my records.
You've heard it, perhaps,
He observed, taking up a glowing cinder with the tongs and lighting it a very long cherry-wood pipe, which was wont to replace his clay when he was in dispositions rather than a meditative mood, or a disparatist.
you've erred, perhaps, in attempting to put colour and life into each of your statements, instead of conforming yourself to the task of placing upon record that severe reasoning from cause to effect, which is really the only notable feature of the thing.
It seems to me that I have done you full justice in the matter, I remarked with some coldness, for I repelled by egotism which I have more than once observed to be a strong factor in my friend's singular character.
No, it is not selfishness or conceit,
Said he, answering, as was his wont, and my thoughts rather than my words.
if I claim full justice for my art, it is because it is an impersonal thing, a thing beyond myself. Crime is common, logic is rare. Therefore, it is upon the logic rather than upon the crime that you should dwell. You have degraded what should have been a course of lectures into a series of tales.
I mean, why would you do that? I was thinking of making them into a book called The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
Well, that just sounds silly. Who would ever read that?
It was a cold morning of the early spring. We sat after breakfast on either side of the cheery fire in the old room at Baker Street. A thick fog rolled down between the lines of dun-coloured houses. The opposing windows looked like dark, shapeless blurs of the heavily yellowed reefs. Our gas was lit and shone on the white cloth and glimmer of china and metal. The table had not been cleared yet. Sherlock Holmes had been silent for the morning, in dipping continuously into the advertisement columns of a succession of papers, until at last, having opportunity given up his search, he had emerged in no very sweet temper to lecture me upon my literary shortcomings.
At the same time,
He remarked after a pause, during which he had sat puffing at his long pipe and gazing down to the fire.
you can hardly be open to a charge of sensationalism, for out of these cases which you have been so kind as to interest yourself in, a fair proportion do not treat it of crime in a legal sense at all. The small matter which I have endeavoured to help the King of Bohemia, the singular experience of Miss Mary Salterland, the problem when connected with the man with the twisted lip, and the incident with the noble bachelor, which all matters were which are outside the pale of the law. But in avoiding the sensationalism, I feel you may have bordered on the trivial.
You in the end may have been so, I answered, but the methods I hold have been novel and of interest.
But sure, my dear fellow, what do the public, the great unobservant public, who would hardly tell the weaver by his tooth, or compositor by his left thumb, care about the finer shades of analysis and deduction? What indeed? If you are trivial, I cannot blame you. The days of great cases are past. Man, or at least criminal man, have lost all enterprise and originality. As to my own little practice, it seems to be generating into an agency for recovering lost lead pencils and giving advice to young ladies from boarding schools. I think I may have touched bottom at last, however. This note I had this morning marks out 0 point.
Oh, got another ad. Do 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 do. Singing? Oh, you can still hear me. It's always unclear when these ads are going if people are getting them or not. I don't know like who has turbo or nitro or not nitro, it is turbo. Or no, I'm pretty sure you're not a sub because I know all the people who are subs. I don't get ads ever. Awesome. And ad is over. Okay, continuing. He tossed a crumpled letter across to me. It was dated with a Montague plaque, or montage plaque, upon the preceding evening, and ran thus: Dear Mr. Holmes, Hi you, welcome to the stream. Dear Mr. Holmes, Oh wait, no, this is Violet. Okay. Dear Mr. Holmes, I'm very anxious to consult with you as whether I should or should not accept a situation which has been offered me as governess. I should call 10:30 tomorrow, but I do not inconvenience you. Yours faithfully, Violet Hunter. I have a cheat code of not having human rights in my country, but also Twitch and YouTube ads. Hope you're having a great stream so far. It has been going well. We've almost wrapped up the entire collection of the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. This is the last story. Do you know this young lady? I asked.
Not I.
It is past 10 now.
Yes, I've no doubt that is already.
I have one joke and I'm not sorry. It may turn out to be of more interest than you think. You remember the affair of the blue carbuncle, which appeared to be a mere whim at first, developed into a serious investigation. It may be so in this case also.
Well, let's hope so. But our doubts will very soon be solved. For here, unless I am much mistaken, is the person in question.
As he spoke, the door opened and a young lady entered the room. She was plainly but neatly dressed, with a bright, quick face, freckled by like a pulver's egg, the brisk manner of a woman who had her own way to make in the world.
You will excuse my troubling, I'm so,
what? Said she, as my companion rose to greet her.
But I had very strange experiences, and as I have no parents or relations of any sort from whom I can ask advice, I thought that perhaps you would be kind enough to tell me what I should do.
Pray, take a seat, Miss Hunter. I shall be happy to do anything I can to serve you.
I could see that Holmes was favourably impressed by the manner and speech of his new client. He looked her over in the searching fashion and composed himself with his lids drooping and his fingertips together to listen to her story.
I've hence been a governor for 5 years, said she, in the family of Colonel Spence Monroe. But 2 months ago, Colonel received an appointment at Halifax, in Nova Scotia, and took his children over to America with him, so I found myself without a situation. I advertised, and I answered advertisement without success. At last, the little money which I had saved began to run short. I was at my wits' end as to what I should do. There is a well-known agency for governesses in the West End called Westerways. There I used to call about once a week in order to see whether anything had turned up which might suit me. Westerways was the name of the founder of the business, but it is really managed by Miss Doppel. She sits in her whole little office, the ladies who are seeking employment wait in the under room, and are then shown in one by one, but she controls her ledger and sees whether she has anything which would suit them. Well, when I was called last week, I was shown in her little office, as usual. But I found that Miss Dumpler was more alone. A prodigiously stout man, with a very smiling face, a great heavy chin, which rolled down in folds upon the folds of his throat, sat at the elbow with a pair of glasses with his nose, looking very earnestly at the ladies. He soon entered. I came in as he gave quite a jump in his chair, turned quickly to Miss Duper. "This one will do," said he. "I could not ask for anything better. Capital." He seemed quite enthusiastic, rubbed his hands together in the most general fashion. He was such a comfortable looking man, but it was quite a pleasure to look at him. "You're looking for a situation, miss?" he asked. "Yes, sir. As a governess, yes, sir. And what's the salary at? I had £4 a month in my last place in Colonel Spencer's Morrow." "Oh, tut, tut, sweating, rank sweating!" he cried, throwing his fat hands into the air like a man with boiling passion. "How could anyone offer so pitiable a sum to a lady with such attractions and accomplishments?" "My accomplishments, sir, may be less than you imagine," said I. "A little French, a little German, music and drawing." "Tut, tut!" he cried. "That is all quite beside the question. The point is, have you or have you not the bearing or disposition of a lady? That is, in a nutshell. If you have not, you are not fitted for the rearing of a child who may, some day, play a considerable part in the history of the country. If you have, why then have you good not? Would any gentleman ask you to consent to accept anything under 3 figures? Your salary with me, madam, will commence at 100 a year." You may imagine, Mr. Holmes, that to me, destitute as I was, such an offer seemed almost too good to me. The gentleman, however, seeing perhaps the look of incredibly upon my face, opened a pocketbook and took out a note. "It is also my custom," said he, smiling in the most pleasant fashion, until his eyes were just little two shining slits amid the wide creases of his face, "to advance to my young ladies half the salary beforehand, so they may meet my little expenses of the journey and their wardrobe." It seemed to me that I had never met so fascinating, so thoughtful a man, as I was already in debt to my tradesmen. The advance was a great convenience, and yet there was something unnatural about the whole transaction, making me wish to know a little more before I quite committed myself. "May I ask where you live, sir?" said I. "Hampshire, Army rural place, Copper Beeches, 5 miles on the far side of Winchester. It's a most lovely country, my dear young lady, and dearest old country home." "And my dear sir, I am very glad to know what they would be." "One child, one dear little romper, just 6 years old. But if you could see him killing cockroaches with slippers, smack, 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 3 gone before he could wink." He leaned back in his chair and laughed his eyes into his head again. I was little startled at the nature of the child's amusement, but the father's laughter made me think perhaps he was joking. "My sole duties, then," I asked, "are to take care of a single child?" "No, no, not the sort, my dear young lady. Your duty would be, as I am sure your good sense would suggest, to obey any little command my wife might give, provided always that they were such a command as a lady might be, with propriety, obey. You see no difficulty, eh?" "I should be happy to make myself useful." "Quite so. In dress now, for example. We are fatty people, you know, fatty but kind-hearted. If you were asked to wear any dress, where we might give you, we might not object to our little whim." "No," said I, considerably astonished at his words. "Or to sit here or sit there, that would not be offensive to you?" "Oh, no." "Or to cut your hair quite short before you come to us?" I could hardly believe my ears. "As you may observe, Mr. Holmes, my hair is somewhat luxuriant, and a rather particular tint of chestnut. It has been considered artistic. I would not dream of sacrificing it to an offhand fashion. I'm afraid that'd be quite impossible." said I. He had been watching me eagerly under his small eye. I could see a shadow pass over his face as I spoke. I'm afraid that is quite essential, he said. It is a little fancy of my wife's and ladies' fancies, you know. Madam, ladies' fancies must be consulted. So you won't cut your hair? No, sir. Oh, I really could not, I answered firmly. Ah, well, then that quite settles the matter. It is a pity, because in other respects you would have really done very nicely. In that case, Miss Stupid, I had best inspect a few more of your ladies. The managers have said all this while busy with the papers, without a word to either of us, that to me now, with so much annoyance upon her face, could not help suspecting she had lost a handsome commission through my refusal. Do you desire your name to be kept upon the books? She asked. If you please, Miss Stupid. Well, really, it seems rather useless that she refused the most excellent offers in this fashion, said she sharply, but she could hardly expect us to exert ourselves to find such another opening for you. Good day to you, Miss Hunter. She struck a gong upon the table, and I was shown out by the page. Well, Mr. Holmes, when I got back to my lodgings, found a little enough in the cupboards, 2 or 3 bills upon the table. I began to ask myself whether I'd done a little foolish thing. After all, there are people at strange fact, expecting obedience to the most extraordinary matter, or at least ready to pay for their eccentricity. Very few governesses of England are getting £100 a year. Besides, what use was my hair to me? Most people are improved by wearing it short. Perhaps I could be among the number. Next day I inclined to think that I had made a mistake. But the day after I was sure of it, and I almost overcome my pride so far to go to the agency and inquire whether the place was still open, when I received a letter from the gentleman himself. I have here, and I'll read it. The Copper Beeches, dear Winchester, dear Miss Hunter. Miss Stupid is very inclined to give me your address. I write from here to ask you whether you reconsider your decision. My wife is very anxious, and you should come, for she has been given attracted by my description of you. We are willing to give 30 a quarter, or 120 a year. So that is a recompense for your any little inconvenience which its earth fan may cause you. That is not very exalting, after all. My wife is very fond of a particular shade of eccentric blue. I'd like you to wear such a dress indoors in the morning. You need not, however, go to the expense of purchasing one, as we have one belonging to my dear daughter Alice, now in Philadelphia, which may, as I should think, fit you very well. Then, as to sitting here or there, or amusing yourself in any manner indicated, they need cause you no inconvenience. As regarding your hair, no doubt a pity, especially as I could not help remarking its beauty during our short interview. But I'm afraid I must remain firm upon this point. I have only hoped that the increased salary may recompensate you for the loss. Your duties, as far as the child is concerned, are very light. Now, do try to come. I shall meet you at the dog cart at Winchester. Let me know your train. And yours faithfully, Chopwood, Newcastle. Come on, scrolling. There it goes. There's a letter which I have just received, Mr. Holmes, and my mind is made that I will accept it. I thought, however, that before taking the final step, I'd like to submit the whole matter to your consideration.
Well, Miss Hunter, if your mind is made up, that settles the question,
said Holmes, smiling. But you would not advise me to refuse.
I confess it is not the situation which I should like to see a sister of mine apply for.
What's the meaning of it all, Holmes?
Well, I have no data, I cannot tell. Perhaps you have yourself formed some opinion.
Well, there seems to be only one possible solution. Mr. Collins seems to be a very kind, good-natured man. It's not possible that his wife's a lunatic, though he desires to keep the matter quiet for fear she should be taken to an asylum. Humors her fancy in any way, in order to prevent an outbreak.
It's a possible solution, in fact. As a matter of stand, it is the most probable one. But in any case, it does not seem to be a nice household for a young lady.
But the money, Mr. Holmes, the money.
Well, yes, of course the pay is good. Too good. And that is what makes me uneasy. What should they give you, £120 a year, when they could have the pick for £40? There must be some strong reason behind.
I thought that if I told you circumstances you'd understand afterwards if I wanted your help. I should feel so much stronger if I felt that you were at the back of me.
Oh, you may carry the feeling away with you. I assure you that your little problem promises to be most interesting, which has come my way for some months. There's something distinctly novel about some of the features if you should find yourself in doubt or in danger.
Danger? What danger do you foresee?
Holmes shook his head gravely. It would cease to be a danger if we could find it, but in any time, day or night, a telegram would bring me down to your help.
That is enough. She rose briskly from her chair with the anxiety all swept from her face. I shall go down to Hampshire, quite easy in my mind now. I shall write to Mr. Ruckless and well, at once, sacrifice my poor heir tonight, and start for Winchester tomorrow. A few graceful words urged to Holmes, she bade us both good night and bustled off upon her way. At least, said I, as we heard her quick, firm steps descending the stair, seemed to be a young lady who was very well able to take care of herself.
And she would need to be, said Holmes gravely. I am much mistaken if we do not hear from her within many days or past.
It was not very long before my friend's prediction was fulfilled. A fortnight went by, during which I frequently found my thoughts turning in her direction and wondering what strange side alley of human experience this lonely woman had strayed into. The unusual salary, the curious conditions, the light duties, all pointed to something abnormal, though whether a fad or a plot, or whether the man were a philanthropist or a villain, it was quite beyond my power to determine. As to Holmes, I observed that he sat frequently for half an hour on end, with knitted brow, and an abstract air which he swept the matter away with the wave of his hand when I mentioned it.
Dada, 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 he cried impatiently. I can't make bricks without clay.
And yet he would always wind up muttering that no sister of his should ever accept such a situation. The telegram we eventually received came late one night, just as I was thinking of turning in, and Holmes was settling down in one of those all-night chemical researches, which he frequently indulged in, which I should leave him stooping over a retort, or in a test tube all night, and find him in the same position which I came in to breakfast in the morning. He opened the yellow envelope, then glancing at the message, threw it across to me.
Just look at the trains and broadsides,
said he, and turned back to the chemical studies. The summons was brief and an urgent one. Please. Please be at Black Swan Hotel at Winchester at midday tomorrow. It said, do come. I am at my wit's end. Hunter.
Will you come with me?
Said Holmes, glancing up. I should so wish to.
Just look it up then.
There's a train at 9:30, I said, glancing over my Bradshaw. It is due in Winchester at 11:30.
That will do very nicely. Perhaps I had better postpone my analysis of the acetones, as we may need to be on our best in the morning.
By 11 o'clock the next day, we were well upon our way to the old English capital. Holmes had been buried in the morning papers all the way down, but after we passed the Hampshire border, he threw them down and began to admire the scenery. It was an ideal spring day, a light blue sky, fleckled with little fleecy white clouds drifting across from west to east. The sun was shining very brightly, and yet there was an exhilarating nip in the air which set an edge to a man's energy. All round the countryside, away to the rolling hills around Old Aldershot, the little red and grey roofs of the farmsteading peeped out from amid the light green of the new foliage. Are you not fresh and beautiful? I cried, with all the enthusiasm of a man fresh from the fogs of Baker Street. But Holmes shook his head gravely.
Do you know, Watson, said he, that it is one of the curses of a mind which is turned like mine, that I must look at everything with a reference to my own subject. Look at these scattered houses, and you are impressed by their beauty. I look at them, and only thought which comes to me, feel it of their isolation, the impunity in which crime may be committed there.
Good heavens, I cried. Who would associate crime with these dear little homesteads? Watson, you've been at houses that have had crime in them. Literally the last case.
They're always filled with certain horror. It is my belief, Watson, founded upon my experience, the lowest and vilest alleys in London do not present a more dreadful record of sin than does the smiling, beautiful countryside.
You horrify me.
But the reason is very obvious. The pressure of public opinion can do in the town what the law cannot accomplish. There is no lane so vile, the screams of a tortured child, or the thud of a drunkard's blow does not beget sympathy and indignation among the neighbours, and the whole machinery of justice is ever so close that a word of complaint can set it going, and there he is but a step between crime and the dark. Not these lonely homes, each in its own field, filled for the most part with poor, ignorant folk who know little of the law. Think of the deeds of hellish cruelty, the hidden wickedness which may go on, year in, year out, in such place, and none the wiser. Has this lady who appealed to us for help gone to live in Winchester? I shall never had feared for her. It is 5 miles of country, which makes the danger. Still, it is clear she is not personally threatened.
No, if she can come to Winchester to meet us, she can get away.
Quite so. She has her freedom.
What can be the matter, then? Can you suggest no explanation?
I have devised 7 separate explanations, each of which could cover the fact as far as we know them. But which of these is correct can only be determined by the fresh information, which we shall no doubt find waiting for us. Well, there is the tower of the cathedral. We shall soon learn all that Miss Hunter has to tell.
The Black Swan is an inn of repute in High Street, at no distance from the station, and there we found the young lady waiting for us. She had engaged in a sitting room, and our lunch awaited us upon the table.
"I'm so delighted that you've come,"
she said earnestly.
"It is so very kind of you both. Indeed, I do not know what I should do. Your advice be altogether invaluable to me."
Blay, Lillis, what has happened to you?
"I will do so. I must be quick, for I promised Mr. Rucastle to be back before 3. I got his leave to come into town this morning, though he little knew for what purpose."
Let us have everything in its due order.
Holmes thrust his long, thin legs out towards the fire and composed himself to listen.
"In the first place, I must say that I have met, on the whole, with no actual ill treatment from Mr. or Mrs. Rucastle. I will be fair to them to say that, but I cannot understand them. I'm not easy in my mind about them.
What can you understand?
There are reasons for their conduct, but you shall have it all, just as it occurred. When I came down, Mr. Rucastle met me and drove me in his dog cart to the Copper Beeches. It is, as he said, beautifully situated, not beautiful in it itself, but it is a large square block of a house, whitewashed, but all stained and streaked with damp and bad weather. There are grounds around it, woods on 3 sides, and on the 4th a field which slopes down in a southern highroad, which gliders past about 100 yards from the front door. This ground in front belongs to the house, but there are woods all round the pot. Lord Sunderton and preserves a clump of copper beeches immediately in front of the hall doors, giving its name to the place. I was driven over by my employer, who was admirable as ever, and was introduced by him that evening to his wife and the child. There was no truth, Mr. Holmes, in the conjecture which seemed to us to be probable in your room at Baker Street. Mrs. Raquel is not mad. I found her to be a silent, pale-faced woman, much younger than her husband, not more than 30, I can say, while he hardly even less than 45. From their conversation I gathered they had been married about 7 years, that he was a widower, and that his only child, confessed why, was a daughter who had gone to Philadelphia. Mr. Rucastle told me in private the reason she had left them was that she had an unreasonable aversion to her stepmother. As the daughter could not have been less than 20, I quite imagined that her position had been uncomfortable with her father's young wife. Mrs. Rucastle seemed to me to be colourless in mind as well as in feature. She impressed me neither favourably nor reversely. She was a non-entity. It was easy to see that she was vastly devoted both to her husband and her little son. Her light grey eyes wandered continuously from one to the other, nothing every little want in forestalling if possible. He was kind to her also in his bluff, boisterous fashion. On the whole, they seemed to be a happy couple. Yet she had always had a secret sorrow, this woman. She would often be lost in deep thought. The saddest look upon her face, more than once I had surprised her in tears. I thought sometimes there was the disposition of a child which weighed upon her mind, for I never met so unruly spoiled and so ill-natured a creature. He is small for his age, the head which is quite disproportionately large. His whole life appears to be spent in an alternation between savage fits of passion and gloomy intervals of sulking. Giving pain to any creature weaker than himself seems to be his one idea of amusement. He shows quite remarkable talent in playing the capture of mice, little birds, and insects. Well, I'd rather not talk about the creature, Mr. Holmes, and indeed he'd little to do with my story.
I'm glad of all the details, remarked my friend. Well, they seem to you to be relevant or not.
I shall I shall try not to miss anything of importance. The one unpleasant thing about the house, which struck me at once, was the appearance and conduct of the servants. There was only two, a man and his wife, Tully, for that is his name, a rough, uncouth man, grizzled hair, whiskers, perpetual smell of drink. Twice since I've been with him, he's been quite drunk, and yet Mr. Ruckle takes no notice of it. His wife's a very tall and strong woman with a sour face, as silent as Mrs. Ruckcastle, but less admirable. They're a mostly unpleasant couple, but fortunately I spend most of my time in the nursery and my own room, which are next to each other in one corner of the building. For 2 days after my arrival at Copper Beaches, my life's been very quiet. On the third, Mrs. Ruckcastle came down just after breakfast and whispered something to her husband. "Oh, yes," said he to me, "we are very much obliged to you, Miss Hunter, for falling in with our whims as far as to cut your hair. I assume that it is not detracting the tiniest iota from your appearance. We shall now see how the electric blue dress will become you. You will find it laid out upon the bed in your room, and you would be so good as to put it on. We should both be extremely obliged." The dress which I found waiting for me was a particular shade of blue, excellent material, sort of beige, but it bore unmistakable signs of having been worn before. Could have not been better fit if I had been measured for it. Both Mr. and Mrs. Ruckcastle expressed delight at the look of it. It seemed quite exaggerated as vehemence. They were waiting for me in the drawing room. Oh, I think I know what's going on. Oh, awkward. I think they're trying to get her to like kind of either replace. No, wait, it wouldn't be the old wife. I think they're trying to get her to like kind of take the role of their daughter. Somewhat, or at least have a presence that appears it. The daughter must have like the same general look, either by hair, facial, and has like short cut hair. That must be what's going on here. That's the feeling I get. I don't think for any sinister reason, but it is concerning. They're waiting for me in the drawing room. A very large room, stretching along the entire front of the house, with three long windows reaching down the floor. A chair's been placed close to the central window, with its back turned towards it. In this I was asked to sit, and then Mr. Ruckcastle walked up and down on the other side of the room and told me a series of the funniest stories I'd ever listened to. You cannot imagine how comical he was. I laughed till I was quite weary. Mrs. Ruckcastle, however, who has evidently no sense of humour, never so much as smiled, but sat with her hands in her lap, and a sad, anxious look upon her face. After an hour or so, Mr. Ruckcastle suddenly remarked that it was time to commence the duties of the day. That I might change my dress, and go to little Edward in the nursery. 2 days later, the same performance was gone on, though under exactly similar circumstances. Again, I changed my dress. I sat in the window. I laughed very heartily at funny stories in which my employer had immense reprise, or repository, which he had told him intimately. Then he handed me a yellow backed novel, moving my chair a little sideways, that my own shadow might fall upon the page. He begged me to read aloud to him. I read for about 10 minutes, beginning in the heart of a chapter. Suddenly, in the middle of a sentence, he ordered me to cease and change my dress. You can easily imagine, Mr. Holmes, how curious I became, and as to what the meaning of this extraordinary performance could possibly be. Now, I always very careful. I observed to turn my face away from the window so that I might be consumed with desire to see what's going on behind my back. At first it seemed to be impossible. I soon devised a means. My hand here has been broken, so happy little thought seized me, and I concealed a piece of the glass in my handkerchief. On the next occasion, in the midst of my laughter, I put my handkerchief up to my eyes. There was with little management to see all that was behind me. Confess I was disappointed. There was nothing. At least that was my first impression. Looking glance over, I perceived there was a man standing in the southern road, Small bearded man in a grey suit seemed to be looking in my direction. Are they trying to appease someone they know is watching them that's looking out for the daughter? Is that what's going on here? The road is an important highway. There's usually people there. This man, however, as Linda gets around, he's boarded our field, looking earnestly up. I lowered my handkerchief, glanced at Mrs. Raquel to... Oh, got it. A little bit of granola during this ad. All right, ad's over. I lowered my handkerchief, glanced at Mrs. Rucastle, to find her eyes fixed upon me with a most searching gaze. Said nothing, but I confess that she had divined that I had a mere admirer, seeing what was behind me. She rose once. "Jeffo," said she, "there is an apprentice fellow upon the road there. Just there. Goes up at Miss Hunter." "No friend of yours, Miss Hunter?" He asked. "No, I know no one in these parts." "Dear me, how very pertinent! Can't he turn round?" Motioned to him to go away. "Sure, we better take no notice? No, we shouldn't have him loitering here always. Can't he turn round, wave away like that?" I did as I was told. In the same instant Miss Grasshastle drew down the blind. That was a week ago. At that time I have not sat again in the window, nor have I worn the blue dress, nor seen the man in the road.
Pray, continue. Your narrative promises to be a most interesting one,
said Holmes.
You'll find it rather disconnected, I fear, and there might prove to be little relation between the different incidents which I speak. The very day that I was at the copper pages, Mr. Bracastle told me took me to a small outhouse which stands near the kitchen door. When he approached it, I heard the sharp rattling chain, sound of a large animal moving about. "Look in here," said Mr. Bracastle, showing me a slit between two planks. "Is he not a beauty?" I looked through, and was cushions of or concussions conscious conscious of two glowing eyes and a vague figure huddled in the darkness. "Don't be frightened," said my employer, laughing at the start which I had given. "It's only Carlo, my mastiff. I call him mine, but really old Toller, my groom, is the only man who can do anything with him. I feed him once a day, not too much then, so that he's always on the keen as mustard. Toller sets him loose every night, and God help the trespassers whom he lays and fangs upon. For God's sake, or for goodness sake, he doesn't even know the pretext set your foot on the threshold at night, for it's as much as your life is worth. The warning was so idle when, for 2 nights later, I happened to look out my bedroom window about 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was a beautiful moonlit night, and alone in front of the house still, but over and almost as broad as day. I stand rapt in the peaceful beauty of the scene, for I am aware there was something moving under the shadow of the cobbled beeches, that emerged in the moonshine, saw it was a giant dog, a large calf, tawny tint with a hanging jowl, back muzzle, and huge projecting bones, walking slowly across the lawn, vanished to the shadow upon the other side. Dreadful signal sent a chill to my spine. I did not think any burglar could have done. And now I have a very strange experience to tell you. I had, as you know, cut off my hair in London, placed it in a great coil at the bottom of my trunk. One evening after the chill, I was in bed. I began to amuse myself by examining the furniture in my room, rearranging my own little things. Old chest of drawers in the room, 2 upper ones, empty one, lower one picked. I filled the first 2 with my linens, and I had still much to pack away. I was naturally annoyed at not having the use of the third drawer. Struck me that might have been fastened by mere oversight, so I took out my bunch of keys, tried to open it. Press key fitted to perfection, drew the drawer open. Only one thing in it, but I'm not sure you'd never guess. It was my coil of hair. I took it up and examined it. It was of the same particular tint, same thickness. The impossibility of the thing obtruded itself upon me. How could my hair have been locked in a drawer? With trembling hands I undid my trunk, took out the contents, drew from the bottom my own hair, laid 2 tresses together. I assure you they were identical. Wasn't I extraordinary? Puzzled as I was, that I could make nothing at all of what it meant. I returned the strange hair to the drawer, said nothing of the matter of the Picasso, as I felt that I had put myself in the wrong by opening a drawer which had been locked. I'm naturally observant, as you may have remarked, Mr. Holmes, and I soon had a pretty good plan of the whole house in my head. There was one wing, however, which appeared not to be inhabited at all. A door which faced that would have led to the quarters of the tollers opened in this suite, but it was invariably locked. One day, however, as I ascended the stairs, I met Mr. Rucastle coming out through the door, keys in his hand. Looked on his face, which made him a very different person to the round, jovial man whom I am accustomed. His teeth were red, and his brow was all crinkled with anger. Veins stood out, his temper with passion. He locked the door, hurried past me without a word or a look. This aroused more curiosity, so when I went out for a walk, and the rounds my charge, I strolled round the side which I could see. The windows of the part of the house, there were 4 of them in a row, 3 of which was simply dirty, while the 4th was shuttered up. They were evidently all deserted. As I strolled up and down, glancing at them occasionally, Mr. Rucastle came out to me, looking as merry and jovial as ever. "Oh," said he, "you may not think me rude if I pass you without a word, my dear young lady. I was preoccupied with business matters." I assured him that I was not offended. "By the way," said I, "you seem to have been quite a suite of spare rooms up there. One of them has the shutters up." He looked surprised, and as it seemed to me, a little startled by my remark. "Photography is one of my hobbies," said he. "I have not made my dark room up there. But dear me, what an observant young lady we have come upon. Who would have believed it? Who would have ever believed it?" He spoke in a jesting tone. No jest in his eyes as I looked at him. I had suspicion there, and annoyance, but no jest. Well, Mr. Holmes, from the moment that I understood that there was something about that suite of rooms which I had not known, I was all on fire to go over them. Not merely curiosity, though, and my share of that. That I was more of a feeling of duty, of feeling that some good might come from my penetrating this place. They talk for a woman's instinct. Perhaps it was a woman's instinct which gave me that feeling. At any rate, there was I was not keenly on the lookout for any chances to pass the forbidden door. It was only yesterday that chance came. I may tell you that besides Mr. Rucastle, both Toller and his wife find something to do in these deserted rooms. I once saw him carrying a large black linen bag with him through the door. Recently he had been drinking hard. Yesterday evening he was very drunk. When I came upstairs, there was a key in the door. I don't doubt it's all he had left there. Mr. and Mrs. Rucastle were both downstairs, and the child was with them, so I had an admirable opportunity. Turned the key gently in the lock, opened the door, slipped through. There was a little passage in front of me, unpapered and uncarpeted, which turned at a right angle. Further in, round the corner, were 3 doors in a line, first and third of which were open. They each led to an empty room, dusty and cheerless, with 2 windows in one the other, thick with dirt. Evening light glimmered dimly, so the door was closed. Across from outside of it had been fastened one of the broad bars of iron bed, padlocked at the end with a ring in the wall. Fastened in the other was a stout cord. The door itself was locked as well. The key was not there. This barricaded door corresponded clearly with the shuttered window outside, yet I could see by the glimmer from beneath. The room was not in darkness. Evidently there was a skylight letting the light from from above. As I stood in the passage gazing into this door, I wondered what secret it might veil. Suddenly heard the sound of steps within the room, saw a shadow pass backwards and forwards against the little slits of dim light which shone out from under the door. A mad, unreasoning terror rose in me at the sight, but my overstrung nerves failed me suddenly, turned and ran, and as though some dreadful hand were behind me, clutching at the skirt of my dress, rushed down the passage, through the door, and straight in the arms of Mr. Rucastle, who was waiting outside. "So," said he, "it was you, then? I thought that must be when I saw the door open. Oh, I was so frightened, I bet. My dear young lady, you cannot think how caressing and soothing his manner was, and what has frightened you, my dear young lady. But his voice was just a little too coaxing. He overdid it. Ah, King, on guard against him. A fool should never go into the empty wing, I answered. It is so lonely and eerie in this dim light. I was frightened, ran out again. So dreadfully still in there. Only that, said he, looking at me keenly. Why, what did you think? Why do you think that I locked this door? I'm sure I do not know. It is to keep people allowed who have no business there, do you see? He was still smiling in the most amiable manner. I am sure if I had known. Well then, you know now. If you ever put your foot over the threshold again, here in an instant the smile hardened to a grin of rage, and he glared down at me with the face of a demon, I'll throw you to the mastiff. I was so terrified, I did not know what I did. I suppose that I must have rushed past him in my room. I remember nothing until I found myself lying on my bed, trembling all over. Then I thought of you, Mr. Holmes. I could not live there longer without some advice. I was frightened of the house, of the man and the woman, of the servants, even of the child. All horrible to me. If I could only bring you down, all would be well. Of course, I might have fled from the house, but my curiosity was almost as strong as my fears. My mind was soon made up, and I would send you away. I put on my hat and cloak, went down to the office, which was about half a mile from the house. I returned feeling very much easier. A horrible doubt came to my mind as I approached the door, as the dog might be loose. I remember that Toller had drunk himself into a state of insensibility that evening. Knew he was the only one in the house who had any influence with the savage creature, of or who could venture to set him free. I slipped in safely, and lay awake half the night in my joy at the thought of seeing you. I have no difficulty in getting leave to come to Winchester this morning. Well, I might be back before 3 o'clock, for Mr. and Mr. Ruckels are going on a visit, and will be away all evening, so I must look after the child. Now, I've told you of my adventures, Mr. Holmes. I should be very glad if you could tell me what it all means, and above all, what I should do.
Holmes and I had listened, spellbound, to this extraordinary story. My friend rose now and paced up and down the room, his hands in his pocket, and an expression of the most profound gravity upon his face.
Is Toller still drunk?
He asked.
Yes, I heard his wife tell Miss Recluse that she could do nothing with him.
That is well. And the castles go out tonight?
Yes.
The cellar with the good strong lock?
Yes, the wine cellar.
Seemed to me to have acted all through this matter like a very brave and sensible girl, Miss Adair. You think you could perform one more feat? I should not ask it of you if I did not think you quite an exceptional woman.
I'll try. What is it?
We shall be at the Copper Bridges by 7 o'clock, my friend, and I. The castles will be gone by that time, and Toller will, we hope, be incapable. There will only remain Mrs. Toller, who might give the alarm. If you could send her into the cellar on some errand, turn the key upon her, you would facilitate matters immensely.
I would do just that.
Excellent. We shall then look thoroughly into the affairs. Of course, there is only one feasible explanation. You are brought there to personate someone. The real person is imprisoned in this chamber. That is obvious. As to who the prisoner is, I have no doubt that it is the daughter, Miss Alice Castle. I remember right, who was said to have gone to America. You were chosen doubtless as a resemblance to her height, figure, and the color of your hair. Hers has been cut off, very possibly in some illness, though, for which she had has passed, so of course yours had to be sacrificed too. By a curious chance, you came upon her Therese. The man in the road was undoubtedly some friend of hers, possibly her fiancé. No doubt, as she wore the girl's dress, you were so like her, you convinced from your laughter wherever he saw you. Afterwards, for your gesture, that Mr. Russell was perfectly happy that she no longer desired his attention. The dog is set loose at night to prevent him from endeavoring to communicate with her. So much is fairly clear. The most sensible point in the case is the disposition of the child.
But what has that to do with it?
My dear Watson, you are a medical man. You, as a medical man, are continuously gaining light as to the tendencies of a child by the study of the parents. Don't you see that the converse is equally valid? I frequently gain a first real insight into the character of parents by studying their children. This child's disposition is abnormally cruel, merely for cruelty's sake, and whether he derives this from his smiling father, or as I should suspect, or from his mother, it bodes evil for the poor girl who is in their power.
I'm sure that you're right, Mr. Holmes, cried our client. 1,000 things came back to me, which makes me certain that you've hit it. Oh, let us lose not an instant in bringing help to this poor creature.
We must be circumspect. We are dealing with a very cunning man. We can do nothing until 7 o'clock. At that hour, we shall be with you. It will not be long before we solve the mystery.
We were as good as our word, for it was just 7 when we reached the copper breaches. Having put up our trap at a wayside public house, the group of trees, with their dark leaves shining like burnished metal in the light of the setting sun, were sufficient to mark the house even as Miss Hunter had not standing aside on the doorstep.
Have you managed it?
Asked Holmes. A loud thudding noise came from somewhere downstairs.
There's Miss Toller in the cellar, said she. Her husband lies snoring in the kitchen rag. Here is the case. Which are the duplicates of Mr. Rucassus?
You've done well indeed, cried Holmes with enthusiasm. Now lead the way. We shall soon see the end of this black business.
We passed up the stairs and unlocked the door, followed on down a passage, and found ourselves in front of the barricade which Miss Hunter had described. Holmes cut the cord and removed the transverse bar, and tried the various keys in the lock, but without success. No sound came from within. At the silence, Holmes' face clouded over.
I trust that we are not too late,
said he.
I think, Miss Hunter, we had better go in without you. Now, Watson, put your shoulder into it. We shall see whether we can make our way in.
An old rickety door gave at once with our united strength. Together we rushed into the room. It was empty. No furniture, save a little pallet bed, a small table, and a basket of linens. The skylight above was open and the prisoner gone.
There's been some villainy here, said Holmes. The beauty has guessed Miss Hunter's intention and has carried his victim off.
But how?
Through the skylight. We'll soon see how he managed it.
He swung himself up onto the roof.
Ah, yes, he's the end of a long ladder against the eaves. This is how he did it.
But it's impossible, said Miss Hunter. Ladder was not there when Castles went away.
He's come back and done it. If I tell you that he is clever and a dangerous man, I should not be very surprised if this were he who step I hear upon the stair. I think, Watson, it'd be well for you to have your pistol ready.
The words were hardly out of my mouth before a man appeared at the door or the room, a very fat and burly man with a heavy stick in his hand. Mrs. Hunter shrieked and shrunk against the wall at the sight of him, but Sherlock Holmes sprang forward and confronted him.
You villain,
and said he,
where's your daughter?
The fat man cast his eyes round and then up at the open skylight.
It's for me to know, and
it is for me to ask you that, he shrieked. You thieves, spies and thieves, I caught you, have I? You're in my power, I'll serve you. He turned and clattered down the stairs as hard as he could go.
He's gone for the dog, cried Miss Hunter.
I have my revolver, said I.
Better close the front door,
cried Holmes. We all rushed down the stairs together. Hardly reached the hall when we heard the baying of a hound, screams of agony with a horrible wound sounding which was dreadful to listen to. A little man with a red face, shaking limbs, came staggering out of a side door. "My God!" he cried. "Someone has loosed the dog! It's not been fed for 2 days! Quick, quick, or it'll be too late!" Holmes and I rushed out and round the angle of the house, with Toller hurrying behind us, the huge famished brute, its black muzzle buried in Castle's throat. While he writhed and screamed upon the ground, running up, I blew its brains out and fell over its keen, white teeth still meeting in the great crevices of the neck. With much labor, we separated them and carried him, livingly but horribly mangled, into the house. We laid him upon the drawing-room sofa, and I dispatched the sober Toller to bear the news to his wife. I did what I could to relieve his pain. We all assembled round him with the door open, and a tall, gaunt woman entered the room. "Mrs. Toller!" cried Miss Hunter. "Yes, Mr. Rucastle let me out when he came back before he went up to you. Miss, it is a pity you didn't let me know what you were planning for I would have told you that your pains were wasted." "Ha!" cried Holmes, looking keenly at her.
"It's clear that Mrs. Toller knows more than the matter than anyone else."
"Yes, I do, and I really tell you what I know."
"Then pray sit down. Let us hear it, for there are several points on which I must confess I'm still in the dark."
"I will soon make it clear to you," said she. "I have done so before. Now, if I could go out from the cellar. There's a police court business over there. You remember that I was the one who stood your friend in there, and I was Miss Alice's friend too. She was never happy at home, Miss Alice wasn't, from the time that her father married again. She was slighted in like, and had no way or no say in anything, but it never really became bad for her until after she met Mr. Fowler at a friend's house. As well as I could learn, Miss Alice had right of her own by will, but she was so quiet and patient, she was. Hold on, scrolling's messing up. She was, that she never said a word about them, just left everything in Mr. Rucastle's hands. He knew he was safer there, but when there was a chance of a husband coming forward, who would ask for all that the law could give him, then his father thought it time to put a stop to it. He wanted her to sign a paper, so that whether she married or not, he could use her money. When she wouldn't do it, she kept on worrying her until she got brain fever. For 6 weeks, Hicks was at death's door. Then she got better, at last, all worn to a shadow, with her beautiful hair cut off. That makes no change in her young man, and he struck to her as true men could be.
"Ah," said Holmes. "I think that's what you could have been done. Excuse me. I think that what you have been good enough to tell us makes the matter fairly clear, that I can deduce all that remains. Mr. Rucastle, then, I presume, took this system of imprisonment."
"Yes, sir."
"And brought Mrs. Hunter down from London in order to get rid of the disagreeable or persistence of Mr. Fowler."
"That was it, sir."
"Mr. Fowler, being a perverse man, as a good seaman should be, blockaded the house, and having met you, succeeded by certain arguments, metallic or otherwise, in convincing you that your interests were the same as his."
"Mr. Fowler was a very kind and spoken, free-handed gentleman," Mrs. Toller said Mrs. Toller serenely. "And in this way, he manners that your good man should not have. Or, hold on.
"And in this way he manners is that your good man should have no want of drink, that a latter should be ready the moment when your master was gone out."
You have it, sir, just as it happened."
"I'm sure we owe you an apology, Miss Toller," said Holmes. "We have certainly cleared up everything which puzzles us. Here comes the country surgeon and Mrs. Rucastle. So I think, Watson, we had best escort Miss Hunter back to Winchester. Seems to me that our locus standi That was a rather questionable one.
And thus was resolved the mystery of the sinister house with the copper beeches in the front of the door. Mr. Rucastle survived, but was always a broken man, kept alive solely through the care of his devoted wife. They still live with their old servants who probably he knows so much of Rucastle's past life that he finds it difficult to part from them. Mr. Her father and Mrs. Rucastle were married by a special license, and Miss Castle were married by a special license in Sapton the day after the flight. He is now the holder of a government appointment in the Isles of Menachars. And as to Miss Violet Hunter, my friend Holmes, rather to my disappointment, manifested no further interest in her, when once she had ceased to be a centre of one of his problems, and she is now the head of a private school at Westall, which I believe that she met with a considerable success. All right, and that is the end of this story collection. So, I guess that means it's time to bring things to a close. So I'd like to wish you all a fond farewell, and thank you for stopping by. If you like this, of course, follow me on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing, because it really helps me out. I don't know what I'm doing Friday, because Thursday's my day off. So I don't know what I'm doing Friday yet. I also don't know if I'm going to continue reading Sherlock Holmes next, or if we'll try something else to mix it up or not. I don't know. Anyways, until next time, fairly well.